Chapter 27. Stop. The 100 Charms beauty waved her hand and shouted after Zhang Xian. A group of people stopped in the air. One of her subordinates asked, "Palace Master, why did you stop? Lu Wanwan can't escape. Leave him alive to inform on Guangcang. More than 10 original Soul Stage elders died and so many spirit stones were lost. I believe on Guangcang will feel the pinch." The Allure beauty smiled. The man frowned and said, "Palace Master, don't you want to kill him? I'm afraid it will bring trouble to the Demon Illusion Palace." "Humph. Do you think on Guangcang won't know it was us who killed Lu Wanwan?" The 100 Charm Demon Lady said coldly, "I want the Blue Light sect to know that it was done by my Demon Illusion Palace. I don't think they have the guts to come to my Phantomine Mountain. A bunch of cowards." A trace of hatred flashed through her eyes as she looked at the direction Lu Wanwan escaped in. "Go back and transport the spirit stones back to the palace," she shouted, and everyone flew back to the spirit stone mine. In the sky above the spirit stone mine, the Allure beauty looked around in confusion. She had planted a soul sense on the young man, but why couldn't she sense it? She could clearly feel that the divine sense she planted had been easily dispelled by someone. She was at the early stage of passing tribulation. How could someone who was not at the middle stage of passing tribulation easily dispel the divine sense she planted? Moreover, it had happened in an instant. This meant that the person who had dispelled the divine sense was most likely at the late stage of passing tribulation. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to dispel it in such a short time. "Palace Master, come down and take a look. Something strange has happened," the subordinate who was transporting the dragon body reported. The pretty figure in the air suddenly flashed and entered the warehouse. Looking at the empty warehouse, the Allure beauty's face was no longer seductive. She frowned and her face was full of solemnity. The whole warehouse of spirit stones was gone. How was this possible? He clearly saw that the Blue Light sect had brought the spirit stones in before he made his move. Who on earth had such magical powers to be able to transport all the spirit stones away in such a short period of time? It was simply unimaginable. Recalling the matter of her divine sense being removed by someone just now, she was suddenly startled. Her figure flashed into the air, and she shouted, "Everyone, return to the Demon Illusion Palace immediately. We can't stay here for long." The group of subordinates could hear the urgency in the Palace Master's voice. Not daring to slack off, they flew into the sky and followed the Palace Master. As soon as Yu Qianqiu entered the Golden Pearl, he saw the conspicuous mountain and shouted, "I'm rich." Immediately, he leaped over and had intimate contact with it. He rolled on top of it and danced with joy. He patted the bag full of spirit stones and laughed heartily. After a long time, he stood up and looked at the majestic figure before him with a satisfied expression. Just as he was shaking his head, he saw Shi Xiaotian pacing back and forth at the side. He was slightly taken aback, and only then did he remember that he had brought Shi Xiaotian in as well. Logically speaking, he did not want Shi Xiaotian to know about Jin Zhu, but in the heat of the moment, he did not care so much. So be it. After observing him for this period of time, this kid should be a trustworthy person. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong. Shi Xiaotian seemed to have been walking in circles within a radius of tens of meters. Could it be that this kid had nothing better to do and was taking a walk? Unlikely. He could not help but shout, "Xiaotian, what are you doing?" No response. He shouted a few more times, but there was still no response. It seemed that he could not even see that he was standing in front of him. Yu Qianqiu felt strange and walked over to see what he was doing. But as soon as he walked within tens of meters of Shi Xiaotian, there was a force that repelled him. The harder he tried, the stronger the force became. Yu Qianqiu understood that there was no one else here except for Sister Bai. She must have done something. He immediately passed through the forest and came to the bamboo house. In the bamboo pavilion, the music was still playing, and the beauty was sitting. He laughed and applauded. The beauty really plays the zither well and sings a good song. The white fox did not even bat an eyelid and ignored him. Yu Qianqiu sat in front of her and said with an awkward smile, "Good sister, release the people outside. He's my friend." The music suddenly stopped, and the white fox glanced at him coldly. A certain someone jumped in fright. He had never seen such a sharp look from her. The former said coldly, "It's because I know you sent him in, or else I would have dug out his shifty eyes long ago. He's not welcome here. I'll let him out when you decide to send him out." Ah! Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He thought to himself, how did Shi Xiaoyan's eyes offend you? Looking at the peerless beauty in front of him, he immediately reacted and shook his head with a bitter smile. With your beauty, which man wouldn't take a second look at you? Forget it, I won't say any more. Xiao Tian, you're out of luck. Turn around. The white fox said with a slightly surprised look. What? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. The white fox glared at him and scolded, "I told you to turn around. Didn't you hear me? No way. Sister. You won't even let me look." The other party's pretty face turned cold. Yu Qianqiu did not dare to speak any more and obediently turned around. Two slender fingers reached out and touched Yu Qianqiu's back. Before he could react, he heard the white fox say, "It's done." He turned around and saw a transparent flame on top of her slender fingers. "What is this?" "It's on my body." Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. The white fox frowned and said, "Someone planted a strand of divine sense on your body. If it wasn't discovered in time, the person would have immediately discovered your whereabouts the moment you appeared outside. Judging from this divine sense, the person is a woman. I'm afraid her cultivation level has already reached the early stage of the tribulation passing stage." Could it be her? Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry. He had already suspected the temptress of 100 charms, but he was not sure why she had done this. Could it be that she had discovered that he had stolen the spirit stones? The white fox did not say anything else. A ball of flame appeared on her fingertip and wrapped around the strand of divine sense, turning it into smoke in an instant. Looking at the strand of divine sense that had turned into smoke, Yu Qianqiu's expression turned serious. He tapped his fingers on the stone table happily, thinking about what he should do from now on. The white fox did not disturb him. This scene was familiar to her many years ago. The scholar was frowning as he pondered over the questions in his book while she watched quietly from the side. She liked this feeling very much. The white fox could not figure out why the temptress had planted a divine sense on his body, so she did not think about it for the time being. Sung would not go back. He had enough spirit stones now, so it was time for him to find a place to cultivate. It was not enough to cultivate here. The temptress would definitely leave, and Sung would have to return to the spirit stone mines sooner or later. He should take advantage of the fact that neither of them were around to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, even if he managed to improve his cultivation level here, he would have to leave one day. He could not hide here for the rest of his life. With his cultivation level, it was easy to hide in the Golden Pearl and not be caught, but it would be difficult to run out of the Spirit Stone Mine. He did not know if there was still anyone in the Spirit Stone Mine. No way. He had to go out and take a look now. If he could not do it, he would immediately come back to hide. He did as he said. With a move of his divine sense, the scenery changed, and he appeared in the Spirit Stone Mine. It was quiet all around. The smell of blood had not dissipated, and no one cared about the disgusting severed limbs. No one. This was a good opportunity to escape. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He raised his mysterious heaven skill to the limit and immediately ran in the opposite direction of where Onkwang-sung came from. His cultivation level was still far from flying on a sword, but his running and jumping speed was not something an ordinary person could compare with. He escaped like a wisp of smoke in the desolate mountains. Not long after, he was already far away from the spirit stone mine. Thinking back to the scene at that time, he felt a little scared. Speaking of which, he really had to thank Lu Wanwan. If he hadn't forced him and Shi Xiaotian to carry the last 2 bags of spirit stones, the 2 of them would have been like the other miners, with their heads separated from their bodies. The situation at that time was too sudden. Even if he had the golden pearl, he would not have made it in time. Sigh. Cherish your life and try your best to escape. Just a while after Yu Qianqiu left, almost 100 streams of light came from the direction of Onkwang-sung and landed on the spirit stone mine. If anyone who knew Onkwang-sung saw this, they would be shocked. Almost all the elders of Onkwang-sung were there. Onkwang-sung's sect master Lu Changqing and elder Lu Wanwan were among them. They were led by 3 old men with white hair and beards. Even if Yu Qianqiu was here, he would not have seen these 3 people. Everyone glanced at the spirit stone mine that looked like a slaughterhouse. Their faces were all pale. When the 3 old men in the lead closed their eyes shone brightly. Just this point alone was enough to show the high cultivation level of the 3. Moreover, the 3 of them could stand in front of sect master Lu Changqing. It was obvious that their status was not ordinary. The face of the old man in the middle twitched. He said slowly, "Look around." Other than the 2 old men on the left and right, everyone behind him received the order and dispersed. Soon, the elders returned and reported the situation. When they heard that all the spirit stones had been robbed and there were no survivors in the mine, the old man in the lead snorted and said, "Lu Changqing, what did you do as a sect master? Why did you store the spirit stones for half a year before they were shipped back to the sect?" Lu Changqing's expression changed. He knelt on the spot and said fearfully, "Master, the sect still has a lot of spirit stones in storage. The mining volume of the 5 spirit stone mines is increasing. I'm afraid that we won't be able to store all the spirit stones, so..." "Enough." The old man cut him off. "Spirit stones are for the sect disciples to increase their cultivation level. Why do we need to store so many spirit stones? Since the mining volume has increased, why didn't the distribution of the disciples increase? Could it be that the overall cultivation level of the sect disciples has increased? Would they be afraid of not having spirit stones to enjoy in the future? Short-sighted thing, why did I choose you as the sect master in the first place? All the disciples in the spirit stone mine are dead, and all the spirit stones have been robbed. What a shame. Lu Changqing, how do you want me to explain this to the patriarchs when I return?" "Master, please don't be angry. I know I was wrong. I am willing to accept the punishment." Lu Changqing, who also looked like an old man, had lost all of the dignity of a sect master. "Humph." The old man glanced at the kneeling disciple and looked at the 2 old men on the left and right. He said in a deep voice, "Junior brothers, it seems that I, Onkwang-sung, have been quiet for too long. Some time ago, the Deluo sect killed my disciples and stole my spirit herbs. Now, the Demon Illusion Palace has come to kill and rob. I wonder who will come to visit next time. I just broke through to the middle stage of tribulation passing a few days ago. It's time for me to play a role. What do you think, junior brothers?" One of the old men said coldly, "If I remember correctly, Onkwang-sung should be one of the top 10 cultivation sects of the Hua-Xia Empire." The other old man smiled faintly. "It seems that the cultivation world is too quiet now." Chapter 28. After 2 sunsets and sunrise, he could vaguely see the village with smoke rising from the chimneys. Believing that Ong Kwang-tsung would not find him, Yu Qiancho, who was panting, stopped and returned to the Golden Pearl. The big pile of spirit stones was still there. Looking at Shi Xiaotian again, he was sitting there dejectedly, as if he had no hope of getting out. Yu Qiancho looked at him and shook his head. He passed through the forest and walked into the bamboo pavilion. He smiled bitterly at the beauty in the pavilion. "Sister, let him out. I'll bring him out." The white fox stopped playing the zither and glared at him. Without saying a word, she slowly stood up and walked out of the bamboo pavilion. Her white clothes fluttered as she walked out of the forest. Seeing the scattered spirit stones in the forest, she couldn't help but frown. Yu Qiancho followed closely behind. The graceful figure in front of him was still as beautiful as ever, but the feeling that could entice him in the past was no longer there. For some reason, he no longer had any desire to get intimate with the white fox. Perhaps it was because he was used to calling her big sister, and subconsciously, he really did treat her as his big sister. The two of them stood in front of Shi Xiaotian and watched him mumble to himself. He turned a deaf ear to the two people standing in front of him. The sky was so close, but they couldn't see anything. The strange thing was, Yu Qiancho looked around and didn't see any formation. How could it trap Xiaotian? He looked at the white fox beside him and sighed, drawing a prison. "Sister, you're really good, teach me when you can. I can't use it before I reach the foundation building stage," the white fox said softly. Her slender fingers formed a seal, and dozens of white lights shot out from all directions around Shi Xiaotian. Yu Qiancho looked carefully. The things that were shot out were actually spirit stones. The sister beside him waved her arm, and dozens of spirit stones fell onto the pile of cloth bags. So they were using local materials. Just like that, they trapped Shi Xiaotian for 2 days. Yu Qiancho was speechless. "In the future, don't bring irrelevant people in to disturb my peace, do you hear?" White Fox scolded. Her words really sounded like an elder sister lecturing her younger brother. Yu Qiancho smiled sheepishly and said, "Elder sister is right." "Humph." The white fox snorted coldly and disappeared without a trace. Yu Qiancho knew that she was playing her lousy zither again. He thought to himself that she was not tired of playing it over and over again. He wondered if it was time to find a boyfriend for her. But then he smiled. Probably not, this cheap sister was completely infatuated with love. "Boss, where are you? Come and save me. Don't tell me you're really going to abandon little Tian." Shi Xiaotian, who was sitting on the ground, kept muttering to himself. When Yu Qiancho heard what he was saying, he couldn't help but laugh. Of all the people he could provoke, he had to provoke the vixen, who had cultivated for 1,000 years and had reached the late stage of tribulation passing. He walked over and kicked his butt twice, shouting, "What kind of dream are you having? Come back with me." It was Boss's voice. Shi Xiaotian was stunned. He jumped up and turned around. That familiar face with an evil smile was right in front of him. He was so excited that he wanted to say something, but he saw Boss's hand reaching out and pulling him. Then, his vision blurred. When he could see clearly again, the scene had changed. Fortunately, Boss was still in front of him. "Boss!" Shi Xiaotian grabbed Yu Qiancho's arm, fearing that he would run away again. Then, Shi Xiaotian began to talk non-stop, pouring out all of his tragic experiences. Yu Qiancho looked at him coldly and said, "Are you done?" Shi Xiaotian was stunned. He nodded stiffly, indicating that he was done. Following that, Yu Qiancho gave him a torrent of abuse. The gist of it was, "Do you know who you're messing with? That's my sister. If it wasn't for me, she would have dug your eyes out." Shi Xiaotian was a bit dumbfounded by the scolding. He stared at his boss's face for a long time before muttering, "How can two siblings look so different?" Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu didn't hear him. Otherwise, he would have been fiercely provoked. "Boss, where is this?" Shi Xiaotian looked around and asked. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and smiled. He let out a long breath and said, "I also don't know where this place is. But from today onwards, the two of us will no longer exist in Ongquangsong. We also don't need to look at Ongquangsong's face anymore." He was right. When Lu Wanwan returned to Ongquangsong, many people asked about Yu Qianqiu. The answer they got was that he had probably died in the hands of the Enchantress of 100 Charms. This made all the elders sigh. The capital of the Huaxia Empire was a bustling place. There was an endless stream of horses and carriages, and people came and went. Both sides of the smooth streets were lined with inns and tea houses. There were all kinds of shops. Walking on the streets, the sound of peddlers could be heard everywhere. From time to time, beautiful women dressed up could be seen. They were in groups of 3 to 5, trying to attract people. Looking at the signboards behind them, it was nothing more than Yi Hong Brothel or 100 Flower Brothel. The ladies in the brothel had long trained their eyes. They could tell who was rich and who wasn't. For example, the two people walking on the street, the ladies were afraid to avoid them. Yu Qianqiu and Shi Xiaotian chuckled. Their current appearances were indeed unsightly. They had traveled thousands of miles and were covered in dust. Finally, they had arrived at this bustling capital city. Why did they come here? Because Shi Xiaotian was homesick. Also, the two of them had left Ongquangsong and didn't know where to go. Yu Qianqiu was also interested in seeing the capital. National Pillar General's residence. Far away from the bustling city, in front of a majestic courtyard, Yu Qianqiu read the signboard. He looked at Shi Xiaotian suspiciously and said, "Are you sure this is your home? Are you sure?" He couldn't be blamed for asking this question. The latter had led him on a few wrong paths while searching for his home. In the end, he had gone through so much trouble, and now he was led to a place with such a scary signboard. Shi Xiaotian shook his head silently. Looking at the majestic courtyard, tears welled up in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu looked at him in disdain. This unlucky child was crying so easily. It was really unbearable. However, it seemed like he was right. He didn't say anything else. He crossed his arms and waited quietly. The two of them were silent for a while. Just as Shi Xiaotian was about to knock on the door, the hurried sound of horse hooves came from afar. The two of them turned their heads to look. Dozens of horses galloped over from afar. Soon, they arrived before the two of them. "Stop!" The leading young general in dark silver armor waved his hand and shouted. He pulled the reins in his hand. The strong horses neighed, and the dozens of people behind them stopped the galloping horses. Dozens of people jumped off their horses at the same time, their armor clanking loudly. Their imposing manner was truly extraordinary. Wow! This is so much more handsome than in the movies. Yu Qianqiu was envious. The door of the National Pillar General's residence opened slowly with a dull sound. A servant walked out and shouted, "Second young master is back." He ran to the young general with a smile and took the reins. The young general glanced at Yu Qianqiu and Yu Qianqiu at the door. His gaze landed on Shi Xiaotian. He paused for a moment. Then, he looked forward and strode inside. Second brother. The young general who had just stepped on the stairs was shocked. He turned his head slowly and looked at Shi Xiaotian in disbelief. He looked at him up and down. Then, he turned and said in surprise, "Third brother. Is that you, third brother?" "Second brother. It's me. I'm Xiaotian." Shi Xiaotian stumbled over. Third brother, it's really you. The young general exclaimed. The two brothers ran over and hugged each other. The servant holding the horse paused for a moment, then immediately handed the reins in his hand to a soldier beside him, and hurriedly ran into the mansion. After a few words, the young general suddenly pushed Shi Xiaoyan's shoulder away. He looked at his younger brother and said, "Third brother, didn't you get taken away by the immortals to cultivate? How did you end up like this? And this is..." The last sentence was directed at Yu Qianqiu. The latter nodded and smiled at him. Shi Xiaotian was speechless. With tears on his face, he shook his head and choked, "Are father and mother healthy?" "Ha!" The young general laughed and patted his brother's shoulder. "Come, let's talk inside." Then, he waved at Yu Qianqiu and said, "This brother must be a friend of my third brother. Please come in and have a seat." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands in thanks and followed the two brothers into the residence. The moment they entered, they could feel the oppressive aura of nobility. They were surrounded by pavilions and flowers. Servants shuttled back and forth, showing the extraordinary status of this family. Before the three of them reached the richly ornamented main hall, a group of people with a beautiful woman in their arms hurried towards them. They saw her calling from afar, "San'er." On the other side, Shi Xiaotian struggled free from his brother's arms and ran over, shouting, "Mother!" The mother and son, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, hugged each other and cried. The latter knelt down and refused to get up. Yu Qianqiu couldn't bear to watch the crying scene, so he closed his eyes to rest. Shi Xiaoyan's second brother glanced at him and frowned. "Mother, third brother, big brother is back." The young general smiled and turned around, shouting, "Big brother, look who's here." Yu Qianqiu, who was resting with his eyes closed, also heard someone coming from behind. He opened his eyes and turned around. A young man dressed like a civil official walked in with a smile on his face. When he heard his second brother's words, he stopped smiling and looked at the person kneeling at his mother's feet. When he saw who it was, he exclaimed, "Third brother, why are you back? How did you end up like this?" As he spoke, he looked at his brother, who was dressed in rags, with surprise in his eyes. Shi Xiaotian stood up and shyly called out, "Big brother." "Ha! Third brother is back. Good, good, good. Today is really a double blessing." Shi Xiaoyan's big brother clapped and laughed. Everyone was a little baffled by his words. The second general said in a daze, "Double happiness. Could it be that big brother has taken a fancy to some young lady? Since third brother is back, tell me about it." The civil official glared at his second brother and ignored him. He walked to Shi Xiaotian and patted his shoulder, smiling, "Third brother, we're going to be kindred spirits soon." "Ha! Come to think of it, it's quite a coincidence today. I was out patrolling with a few colleagues and we met an immortal master with profound transcendence energy. That immortal master could tell at a glance that I have the root of wisdom and has already agreed to take me as his disciple. Third brother, do you think we'll be kindred spirits in the future?" Ha! When he saw everyone looking at each other, he laughed even more complacently. Suddenly, his gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu, who was also dressed in rags. His laughter stopped abruptly and was replaced with arrogance. He frowned and snorted, "Who is this? Since when did the pillar of the State General's mansion become a place where people can come and go as they please?" Chapter 29. Are you referring to me when you say someone who can come and go as he pleases? Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared at him. A hint of fierceness flashed through his eyes, and a hint of coldness floated through his indifferent words. In his previous life, although he was part of the underworld, he was also an overlord of an underground kingdom. The aura that he exuded unconsciously made him look down on everyone else. Although the people present were also people who had been above others for a long time, they relied on their illustrious family backgrounds. Facing Yu Qianqiu's aura that had been tempered through killing and decisiveness, they immediately paled in comparison. The second son of the junior general was slightly surprised. He was also a man who had fought on the battlefield. He wondered what kind of person his third son's friend was. Judging from his aura, it was impossible for an ordinary person to fake it. There seemed to be a faint scent of blood in his aura. It was impossible to have such an aura without dozens of lives on his hands and a long period of experience as a decisive person. This aura seemed to be frequently seen on his father, the pillar of the nation. The others also felt that familiar aura and were momentarily speechless. The second son of the civil official, who had been arrogant just a moment ago, was stunned by Yu Qianqiu's words. The beautiful woman with tears on her face also stopped crying and looked at him in surprise. It was also Shi Xiaoyan's first time seeing Yu Qianqiu like this. It seemed that his big brother had really angered him. He shook his head slightly and walked to his big brother's side with a smile. He turned to everyone and said, "Mother, big brother, second brother. This is my martial uncle and also my savior. If it wasn't for martial uncle, I'm afraid that little Tian would never be able to see mother and my two brothers again." The reason why he introduced his big brother to his family as his martial uncle was obvious. He was naturally afraid that his family would look down on his big brother and cause trouble. He then introduced his three relatives to Yu Qianqiu. This person was actually little Tian's martial uncle. Wasn't that also an immortal? The few of them were surprised by how young Yu Qianqiu was. At the same time, they felt uneasy and thought that they had neglected him just now. One had to know that in the Huaxia dynasty, even the current emperor would treat cultivators with great courtesy. However, they had just cast them aside, and the head of the civil officials had even spoken rudely. The second general immediately bowed and said, "Junior Shi Tian greets Senior Immortal." Yu Qianqiu nodded indifferently. The civil official leader was a little fearful as he bowed and said, "Junior Shi Tian greets Immortal Elder. I didn't know Immortal Elder's identity just now and have offended you. I hope Immortal Elder will forgive me." Yu Qianqiu glanced at him coldly, showing no intention of forgiving him at all. The former's face immediately turned pale. Seeing her eldest son's embarrassment, the beautiful woman also saluted and said, "This mistress Li Hongniang greets Immortal Master. My husband is away on an expedition, and my eldest son lacks discipline. I hope Immortal Master will forgive us if we have offended you." Yu Qianqiu really didn't plan to let go of the Shi clan's eldest son. He had suffered so many sarcastic remarks in Onquanceng, but he had no choice but to lower his head. He didn't think that a mere mortal would dare to speak rudely to him. This immediately ignited the suppressed anger in his heart. But this woman's words had a hidden meaning. "My husband isn't here, as an immortal, you wouldn't bully my son." Moreover, Shi Xiaotian was looking at him with a pleading expression, so he could only suppress the anger in his heart. "Madam, there's no need to be so courteous." His words meant that he would no longer pursue the matter of the eldest son. Li Hongniang and her three sons hurriedly thanked him and ordered the servants to prepare food and wine to properly entertain the immortal. Yu Qianqiu tactfully refused. They had only just met, and things had already turned out like this. What was the point of eating and drinking together? Actually, there was another reason why he didn't get angry. His cultivation was indeed not that great, only at the 5th level of qi refining. Even Shi Xiaotian had already reached the 7th level of qi refining. Although the latter still couldn't see through his cultivation, if they were to fight, who knows which side Shi Xiaotian would side with. In any case, it was impossible for Shi Xiaotian to help him beat up his own brother. Also, if his cultivation was exposed, would Shi Xiaotian still treat him as the boss in the future? This was really hard to say. He remembered that a certain elder brother with the surname Li once said, "When the people's hearts are scattered, it's not easy to lead a team." Finally realizing the importance of cultivation, he pulled Shi Xiaotian to the side and asked him to arrange a secluded place to cultivate. The latter immediately passed on his eldest son's words to his mother, and immediately the entire general's mansion became busy. The pillar of the state general's mansion had a spacious back garden, and a small courtyard in the most remote corner was quickly cleaned up. The general's mansion issued a ban, and without permission, no one was allowed to enter the back garden. Xiaotian, if your family asks about your experiences, I think you should choose to tell them. Knowing too much won't do them any good. Also, it's best not to let outsiders know about what we're doing here. Otherwise, if Ong Guangzong finds out one day, we'll be in big trouble. Yu Qianqiu said. The small courtyard was remote and quiet, and he was very satisfied. At this time, there were only the two of them in the small courtyard. I understand. Shi Xiaotian nodded. A year quickly passed, and the back garden of the pillar of the state general's mansion became a mysterious place. Other than the third young master Shi Xiaotian, no one else had seen the immortal living inside. As for the matter of the immortal living in the back garden, the general's mansion had issued a strict gag order. Those who were lucky enough to see it that day would not say a word, and the other servants naturally didn't know. The servants who knew about it would secretly worship the small courtyard every day when they passed by the back garden. The legendary immortals lived there. The masters of the general's mansion were very happy that there was an immortal living in their house. They always felt that they had a backer, and their hearts were very secure. Most importantly, the immortal had the demeanor of an immortal, and never disturbed them. As long as good wine and food were sent over every day, the immortal wouldn't even take a step out of the courtyard, let alone disturb them. But there was one person who was more depressed, the eldest young master of the general's mansion. Once, in order to show off to the immortal who wanted to accept him as a disciple, he mentioned that there was also an immortal hiding in his house. In the end, the immortal refused to accept him as a disciple, and even refused to see him. This was too painful for him. It was fine if he didn't know that he had the root of wisdom, but after knowing, it was simply too torturous. How many people could resist the temptation of immortality? So he set his sights on Yu Qianqiu, wanting to become his disciple, and pestered his third young master several times to recommend him. But his third young master didn't agree at all, and said, "Big brother, I really can't see where you have the root of wisdom, you must have been tricked by someone." He was obsessed and didn't believe it no matter what, thinking that his third young master didn't want to recommend him because he had offended his martial uncle, and because of this, he blamed his third young master. There was one time when he was blinded by lard, and he barged into the small courtyard, intending to beg Yu Qianqiu to accept him as a disciple. In the end, the moment he stepped into the courtyard, he felt like he was in a fog, and he couldn't get out no matter how many twists and turns he went, and he didn't see a single person. This was originally a simple formation that Yu Qianqiu learned from the white fox in case someone barged in, and he set it up in the courtyard. Although it wasn't a powerful formation, it wasn't a problem to trap a mortal, but he didn't expect it to trap this guy. When Shi Xiaotian found out, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could bring his big brother out, but it wasn't good for him to do that, so he could only beg Yu Qianqiu to let him go. After Yu Qianqiu understood why Shi Xiaotian was trapped, he shook his head and refused Shi Xiaotian, saying that he wanted to keep Shi Xiaotian trapped for a few more days, and if he didn't let his big brother suffer a little, he was afraid that there would be no end to it. Shi Xiaotian thought about it and agreed. But after 2 days, Li Hongniang became anxious, and she couldn't find her eldest son anywhere, and the imperial court was also looking for him everywhere. In the end, Shi Xiaotian was afraid that his mother and second brother would be too anxious, so he told his family that his big brother had barged into his martial uncle's courtyard and was trapped. Li Hongniang and Shi Yintian were shocked, and they quickly went to the courtyard in the back garden, but they didn't dare to enter the courtyard again. They saw Shi Yutian running around like a headless fly, and it was obvious that he was very weak since he hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 2 days. The mother and son immediately knelt in front of the courtyard and begged Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu thought that since the food and lodging belonged to him, he didn't want to go overboard, so he released Shi Yutian and warned him that if he barged in again, he wouldn't let him off lightly. This was only a small matter, but after the mother and son saw Yu Qianqiu's divine power, they respected him even more. After Shi Yutian had a taste of it, his heart itched even more, but he didn't dare to barge in again. Relying on the large amount of spirit stones and the golden pearl, Yu Qianqiu successfully broke through to the 10th level of qi refining in a short period of 1 year. Shi Shaotian reached it earlier than him. After reaching the peak of qi refining, the next step was foundation building. After asking the white fox, a very serious problem was placed in front of him. Foundation building, core bearing, nascent soul, and tribulation passing were the 4 thresholds that cultivators couldn't cross. These 4 thresholds couldn't be crossed without the help of external forces, and the so-called external forces referred to the miraculous pills that could cleanse one's meridians. Why must one cleanse one's meridians? A cultivator's body was like a vessel. If the vessel wasn't strong enough, it wouldn't be able to bear a stronger cultivation. If one forcefully broke through, there would only be one result, and that was death by the explosion of the body. Yu Qianqiu asked the white fox, "You were trapped in the cave for so many years and didn't take any miraculous pills, so how did you break through from the nascent soul stage to the tribulation passing stage?" Now that I know this is the magical effect of the golden pearl, does that mean I can also use it to advance? The white fox told him again, this is not the same thing. The cultivation world was divided into 3 paths: human, demon, and ghost. The white fox belonged to the demon path, which was different from the other 2 paths. The demon path's cultivation and body refinement were carried out at the same time. If the body refinement was not successful, cultivation would be difficult. It was the hardest path to cultivate among the 3 paths, but it was also the most powerful among the 3 paths. The ghost path was the easiest path to cultivate. They didn't cultivate spiritual qi, but yin qi. As long as there was enough yin qi, they could increase their cultivation without any restrictions. However, due to the restrictions of the laws of heaven and earth, its power was also the weakest among the 3 paths. Although the human path was divided into the righteous path and the demon path, this was just a division between people. In fact, it was just a difference in the cultivation method. In the end, there was only one path. The human path was intelligent, and the 3 paths were respected. For the demon path, if they wanted to ascend to the immortal realm, they wouldn't have a chance if they didn't cultivate into a human form. Perhaps there was a gain and a loss. The laws of heaven and earth gave the human path the best, but gave it the weakest body. Therefore, the human path could think of many ways to increase their cultivation, but the body was the biggest restriction. In short, it told him that although the golden pearl was extremely strange, since it existed in the world, it had to follow the laws of heaven and earth. Some things couldn't be changed randomly, so it could help demons, but it might not help humans. The white fox also said, "When the golden pearl was in my body, although I didn't use it, I could feel the changes in my body and cultivation day after day." How did you feel after swallowing it for such a long time? Yu Qianqiu immediately became dejected, and told her that other than his physique becoming a little better, he didn't feel anything. The white fox sighed. This kind of treasure of heaven and earth must have its own advantages for the human, demon, and ghost paths. There was no other way. It seemed that he still had to get a building foundation pill to build his foundation. She also didn't eat it when he asked the white fox, so she didn't know how it was done. She only knew that the bigger sects should have the recipe to refine the building foundation pill, and it wasn't an important secret. It seemed that the spirit grass used to refine the pill was quite hard to find. Yu Qianqiu was depressed. If he had known earlier, his relationship with the Clear Sky sect wouldn't have been so stiff. He couldn't just run back now. Wasn't that courting death? Not only was he depressed, Shi Shaotian was also depressed. Only now did he find out that this martial uncle of his actually hadn't passed the building foundation stage, causing him to hold onto a pile of spirit stones and cultivate with all his might. In the end, even if Yu Qianqiu gave him more spirit stones, he wouldn't dare to absorb them anymore. Why? The true qi in his body had already reached the limit of the aura refining stage. If he absorbed any more, his body would explode. Who would dare to play with their lives? In the courtyard, the two of them looked at the pile of spirit stones and sighed. Although these things were good, what could they do? Where to get the building foundation pill became a headache. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu shouted, "I got it." Shi Xiaotian's body trembled, and his eyes lit up. "Boss. You got away." Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Doesn't your big brother know some *T celestial being? Go call your big brother over, I have something to ask him." Chapter 30. That's right. Shi Xiaotian slapped his forehead and ran out without saying anything else. After searching the residence, the servant said that the eldest young master had gone on an errand. He didn't want to wait any longer. He immediately ordered someone to prepare a horse and ran to the yamen where his eldest brother worked. He anxiously found his eldest brother. When the latter heard that it was Yu Qianqiu who was looking for him, he ran out without even asking for leave. As for the sedan chair that he used to work in, he didn't want to sit in it anymore. He untied the horse at the entrance of the yamen and disregarded the civil official's politeness. He got on the horse and galloped home. The way he got on the horse was very smooth. He was indeed the son of the pillar of the state general. He had a good upbringing. "Eldest brother, wait. That's my horse," Shi Xiaotian shouted at the entrance of the yamen. However, his eldest brother wouldn't hear him. Even if he did, he probably wouldn't come back. He had no choice but to let his eldest brother's sedan chair bearer carry him back. The servant of the general's residence was stunned when he saw Shi Yutian returning on a horse. He smiled and said, "The eldest young master is back." Shi Yutian jumped off the horse and threw the reins away. He didn't have the time to care about him. He ran to the backyard and was about to enter when he seemed to think of something. He held onto the wall and shouted excitedly, "Celestial Master, Shi Yutian is here." He was afraid that no one inside could hear him, so he shouted twice. Didn't he say he went on an errand? Why was he here so soon? Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He then said politely, "Yu Tian is here. Come in." He sounded like a senior talking to a junior. Shi Yutian didn't care about this. He accepted the order and walked in as if it was a matter of course. With the permission of the Celestial Master, he didn't encounter the same situation as last time. His anxiety turned into joy. On the steps under the eaves, the Celestial Master was looking at him with a smile. Shi Yutian was so excited that he couldn't speak. He knelt down and kowtowed continuously. "What are you doing?" "I just want to ask you a question." "Why are you so excited?" "I'm not even as old as you. Won't this shorten my life?" Yu Qianqiu was a little dumbfounded. He didn't know that Shi Yutian would come before his younger brother could explain himself. He hurriedly walked down the steps and helped Shi Yutian up. He was so excited that his body trembled a little. "Did your brother tell you everything?" "There is something I need your help with," Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. Shi Yutian nodded and shook his head. Yu Qianqiu frowned, not knowing what he meant. He hurriedly replied, "Immortal Master, if there's anything you need, just tell me. As long as it's something I can help with, let alone one, even if it's 100 or 1,000, it's not a problem." "That's good." Yu Qianqiu nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, "Last time, I heard that you wanted to become the disciple of an immortal. Where does that immortal live? Can you take me to meet him?" Shi Yutian hurriedly knelt down again and said, "Please don't misunderstand, immortal master. I won't look for him again. I will follow you wholeheartedly from now on." With that, he kowtowed again. This unlucky child. His imagination was really strong. As expected of someone trained in officialdom. He didn't answer the question and always liked to kowtow. Yu Qianqiu was a little annoyed and shouted, "All right. Stand up." Shi Yutian was so scared that he stood up obediently and looked at him in fear. Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice, "I don't have any other meaning. I just want you to take me to him. I have something to do. Do you understand?" He understood. So that was what it was about. He squeezed out a smile and said, "That immortal is in the Spirit Stone Temple 30 miles outside the city. He's called the Spirit Stone Immortal. I'll take you there now." Damn it. This guy was a donkey. He couldn't be polite. Yu Qianqiu grunted and thought to himself, Spirit Stone Immortal. He must have a lot of spirit stones. I don't know if he has as many as I do. The two of them walked to the entrance of the general's mansion. Shi Yutian had just ordered the servants to prepare a horse when Shi Xiaotian arrived in a swaying sedan chair. He rolled his eyes at his big brother and asked for another horse. The three of them got on the horse. Shi Yutian led the way and ran out of the city. Out of the city, the three of them headed north. After running on the official road for a while, Shi Yutian led the two of them along a small path. Not long after, a dilapidated Taoist temple appeared on a small hill in front of them. When they reached the foot of the hill, Shi Yutian suddenly stopped his horse and pointed up. He said nervously, "The immortal lives there. He's the master of the Taoist temple. He has a rule that people who go up the mountain are not allowed to ride on a sedan chair or on a horse. Otherwise, he won't meet them." The two of them looked at the small hill that was only a foot tall. They didn't expect there to be such a rule. They looked at each other. In the end, it was Yu Qianqiu who said with a smile, "That's pretty awesome. It seems like he's really capable. Forget it, let's follow the host. Let's go up." The three of them got down and tied their horses to a tree. They walked to the front of the Taoist temple. The door was closed. Yu Qianqiu gave Shi Yutian a look, asking him to knock on the door. The latter nodded and smiled bitterly. He walked to the door and knocked on the door. After a while, they heard footsteps from inside. The door creaked open and a Taoist child's head popped out. Shi Yutian said with a smile, "Little master, could you please inform the master that..." Before he could finish, the Taoist child said angrily, "Why is it you again? My master said that he would never see you again." With that, the door was closed again. Shi Yutian was given the cold shoulder. He turned around and smiled at the two of them. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. "I'll do it." Shi Xiaotian knew about his brother and the Taoist temple. He knew that he had annoyed the person inside, so he went to knock on the door. After knocking a few times, the Taoist child inside shouted, "My master said that he won't be seeing any guests today." Shi Xiaotian turned around and spread his palms innocently, indicating that there was nothing he could do. He then pointed to the wall. It seemed like he was asking if they should climb over the wall. "Do I look like someone who would do that kind of sneaky thing?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. He squinted his eyes and looked around. The Taoist temple was not big. It occupied a small hill. There was nothing special about the surroundings. He did not expect such a powerful cultivator to live here. "Let me try." Yu Qianqiu glanced at the word Spirit Stone Temple on the Taoist temple. He walked to a millstone-sized bluestone opposite the door with his hands behind his back. The two brothers looked at each other, not knowing how he was going to knock. "Damn it. I'm giving you face, but you don't want it." Yu Qianqiu cursed under his breath. He stretched out his hand and lifted the 100-pound bluestone. Before the two brothers could react, they heard him shout, "Get out here!" The bluestone in his hand flew into the wall. Bang! A loud sound came from the courtyard. Dust flew everywhere. Even standing outside, they could feel the ground shaking. The two brothers were dumbfounded. An angry voice came from inside. "Who dares to cause trouble in my spirit stone temple? You bastard!" Yu Qianqiu replied in a loud voice. He hurriedly walked to the door of the Daoist temple and fiercely kicked it. With another bang, 2 pieces of the door directly flew in. "You're courting death." Following the angry shout, a figure jumped over the wall and flew out. As soon as the person landed, he saw Shi Yutian. He pointed at him and scolded, "So it's you again. How dare you bring people here to fight? Do you want to die?" After saying that, he glanced at the other two. Shi Yutian was already scared stiff by Yu Qianqiu's actions. When he heard the person's words, he quickly knelt down and kowtowed. "Immortal Master, please forgive me. Immortal Master, please forgive me." The younger brother saw his older brother's actions and frowned. He pulled him up and shouted, "Big brother, you're giving the general's residence too much face. Putting on such a big show. I was wondering what kind of bullshit immortal had such a high cultivation level. So it's just an old man at the 10th level." Yu Qianqiu laughed. With one look, he could tell that this person was also at the 10th level of the qi refining stage. The person who came had a sage-like appearance. He didn't look very old, about 40 years old. He had 3 long strands of beard, and his face was flushed. If he held the green dragon crescent blade in his hand, he would look like Guan Yu from the TV shows in his previous life. The person who came was the temple's master, Spirit Stone Immortal. He was shocked when he saw the other two. Needless to say, Shi Shaotian was also at the 10th level of the qi refining stage. However, he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu. It didn't matter if he couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation level. What was worse was that Yu Qianqiu could see through his cultivation level at a glance. This meant that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation level was higher than his. Moreover, both of them didn't look very old. To have such a cultivation level at such a young age, they must be disciples of some big sect. Although one couldn't judge one's age by appearance in the cultivation world, they were not people he could afford to offend. Thinking about this, the matter of him being hit by stones was already a small matter. Spirit Stone Immortal's expression changed. He quickly bowed to Yu Qianqiu and said, "I didn't know Senior was coming. Spirit Stone, please forgive me for my offense." Shi Yutian was stunned by Spirit Stone Immortal's respectful attitude. What would happen if even an immortal respected him? He looked at Yu Qianqiu with a fiery gaze. Being addressed as senior by such an old person was a little hard to accept. Yu Qianqiu thought about it and felt relieved. The cultivation world was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Whoever was strong was awesome. Since the other party couldn't see through his cultivation level, it wasn't wrong to address him as senior. He smiled and said, "No need to be so polite. I have something to ask you." Spirit Stone Immortal nodded and said respectfully, "Senior, please come inside." Yu Qianqiu glanced at Shi Yutian, whose eyes were shining, and said to Lil Tian, "I'll be right back. You two wait for a moment." The two brothers agreed. Seeing how respectful their master was, the boy inside the door quickly ran back to prepare tea. The two brothers didn't wait for long outside the door. Suddenly, they heard the sound of fighting coming from inside. Shocked, Shi Shaotian flew into the courtyard. Chapter 31. Just as Shi Shaotian landed in the courtyard, a figure flew out of the Daoist temple's main hall and landed in front of him. When he saw who it was, he was shocked. It was none other than Yu Qianqiu. Shi Xiaotian quickly helped him up. Then, Spirit Stone Immortal jumped out of the main hall's entrance. He pointed his sword at Yu Qianqiu and scolded, "I was wondering which expert came to cause trouble. So it's also a level 10 Qi refinement cultivator. How dare you?" Shi Yutian, who had sneaked in, happened to see this scene. The thought that his master couldn't beat Spirit Stone Immortal appeared in his mind. Yu Qianqiu looked at his tattered robe and wiped the moisture from the corner of his mouth. The back of his finger was smeared with blood. He narrowed his eyes and sneered. When he and Spirit Stone entered, they were polite and asked some questions, and Spirit Stone Immortal answered them sincerely. It turned out that Spirit Stone Immortal had agreed to take Shi Yutian as his disciple, but it wasn't because he had a cultivation bone. In fact, Shi Yutian didn't have a spirit root. Spirit Stone Immortal only took a fancy to his identity and wanted to use him to do things in the secular world. Later, when he heard that there was an immortal hiding in his house, Spirit Stone Immortal immediately gave up on the idea. He was afraid of getting into trouble. Unexpectedly, this Spirit Stone had an extraordinary background. He was born in the Xia Empire's #1 cultivation sect, the Supporting Immortal Island, and his grandfather was an elder of the Supporting Immortal Island. After his grandfather passed away, Supporting Immortal Island declined in his father's generation. Supporting Immortal Island was different from other sections. It had a strange rule. If a disciple failed 3 times in a row, they would be chased out of the sect to make a living on their own. Spirit Stone Immortal Island was chased out of Supporting Immortal Island and ended up here. Perhaps he was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would look down on him. He told Yu Qianqiu a secret. Although he wasn't doing well now, it was still possible for him to return to Supporting Immortal Island. Because his grandfather was an elder, he had an Supporting Immortal medallion. This was something only elders and above had. Anyone with a spirit root could use the token to join the Supporting Immortal Island. However, the token could only be used once before it was taken away. Thus, he wanted to see if there was a chance for him to reach the Foundation establishment stage outside before going back. Otherwise, if he ran back rashly and failed to reach the Foundation establishment stage next time, he would be chased out again. Then, he would not have a chance to go back anymore. Yu Qianqiu had just escaped from Onquangsang. He had no place to get Foundation Building Dawn, so he came here to inquire about Foundation Building Dawn. Now that he heard that this guy actually had Foundation Building Dawn, how could he not be happy? He then asked Yu Qianqiu if anyone could join Fuxian Island with a token. Spirit Stone did not suspect anything as he had already determined that Yu Qianqiu was a disciple of some other sect. He confidently told Yu Qianqiu that Fuxian Island only recognized the token and not the person. Yu Qianqiu was delighted. He asked Spirit Stone if he could give the immortal supporting token to him. When Spirit Stone heard this, he got a huge shock and scolded himself for talking too much. However, he was afraid that Yu Qianqiu would snatch it from him, so he tactfully refused. Spirit Stone's guess was right. Yu Qianqiu really had the intention to rob him. Seeing that soft talk didn't work, he could only force it from Spirit Stone. However, this immortal supporting token was Spirit Stone's last hope of joining the Supporting Immortal Island. Naturally, he was unwilling to give it to Spirit Stone. One wanted it forcefully, while the other didn't. The two of them finally started fighting. Because Spirit Stone couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, he was rather afraid at first. He resisted with all his might. After a few moves, he was shocked to discover that Yu Qianqiu was only Qi refinement level 10. Spirit Stone's confidence was greatly boosted. Only then did Yu Qianqiu realize that although their cultivation levels were similar, Spirit Stone's battle experience in the cultivation world was far from Spirit Stone's. Hence, the scene that Shi Xiaotian and his brother saw happened. "Boss, let me do it." Shi Xiaotian stared at Spirit Stone. Hee. No need, you stand to the side. Yu Qianqiu sneered and pushed Shi Xiaotian away. In his subconscious, he was still the boss of the underworld. Since he was the boss, if he couldn't win and let his lackeys fight, then he wouldn't be able to survive in the future. Spirit Stone's confidence was greatly boosted. Young man, I'll give you a chance. Go back and improve your cultivation before coming back. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to scold him back, he suddenly felt his dantian heat up. He secretly circulated his energy to check and saw that the golden pearl in his dantian was emitting a golden glow. His whole body suddenly became warm. The meridians that were broken by the palm strike were actually slowly healing. So the golden pearl had such a magical effect. It was indeed a good item. Yu Qianqiu, who had calmed down, stared at the sword in his hand. This was the sword that his master, Hao Sansi, had given to him. This was the first time he used it in a fight. He had clashed a few times just now, but there wasn't even a scratch on it. The quality was indeed good. It just didn't feel as smooth as the machete from his previous life. Damn it. What bullsh** T cultivators. Today, he had finally experienced it. If one's cultivation hadn't reached the foundation building stage, fighting was no different from fighting with mortals. They couldn't fly, and it was even more impossible for them to casually swing their swords like the white fox. If they used all their strength, they might be able to use the move, air-splitting palm, but the opponent wouldn't just stand there and let you chop them. I don't believe that I, your father, was considered an expert in one-on-one fights and group fights in my previous life. Today, I won't be able to defeat you. Thinking of this, he pointed the sword in his hand at Spirit Stone and coldly said, I'll ask you again, are you going to give me the item or not? Spirit Stone was stunned. He couldn't win, yet he still dared to be stubborn. He couldn't help but laugh evilly, you really don't know life from death. I gave you a chance, but you don't want it. Then, you can stay here and don't leave. After he finished speaking, he fiercely pounced forward and stabbed with his sword. Meeting on a narrow path, the courageous wins. A phrase flashed in Yu Qianqiu's mind. With a sigh, he swung his sword to block the sword that was stabbing at him. Immediately, he held the sword with both hands and used all his strength to wildly hack at it. The long sword whistled through the air as it chopped down. Spirit Stone was slightly startled. He raised his sword to block the attack and dodged to the side. Clang! He suddenly felt his palm go numb from the impact, and his sword almost fell out of his hand. He quickly took a few steps back. However, the other party followed up as if he didn't care about his life. He held the sword with both hands like it was a knife and hacked at Spirit Stone in a frenzy. Yu Qianqiu chased after Spirit Stone, who was dodging all over the place. His sword wanted nothing more than to hack him in half. Clang, clang, clang. The long swords clashed non-stop. Shi Xiaotian, who was originally secretly worried for Yu Qianqiu, was dumbfounded. Today, he finally understood a principle. So swords could be used like this. Bossy's sword dance was astonishing. It was simply unforgettable after seeing it. It was like a torrential storm of attacks without any regard for his life. Shi Yutian, who was hiding at the side, was also a little dumbfounded. So this was how immortals fought. They didn't seem to be much different from the hooligans on the street. They didn't have any of the legendary elegance at all. He couldn't help but ask himself, even if I could cultivate in the future, would I be able to do this? In an instant, his heart turned gloomy, and his thoughts of cultivating became colder. Spirit Stone, who was full of confidence just a moment ago, suddenly felt miserable after a few moves. He had never seen someone fight with a sword like this. The hand that was holding the sword was almost unable to hold it. It was a pity that he had never practiced using his left hand. Otherwise, he could switch to using his left hand. That way, he would be able to hold on for a while longer. Spirit Stone fled in all directions in the courtyard. He really couldn't hide anymore, so he swung his sword to block once. However, something happened that made him tremble with fear. He had unknowingly hidden in a dead corner between two side rooms. The hand that was holding the sword was already trembling from the impact. He couldn't help but be scared out of his wits. He thought to himself, "My life is over. Don't you dare hurt my master." The voice of a boy came from behind Yu Qianqiu. The boy raised a big iron rod that was used to strike a bell, and fiercely smashed it towards Yu Qianqiu's head. Yu Qianqiu took a moment to take a look. He turned around and slashed with his sword. The iron rod that was made of ordinary iron was immediately split into two. How could the boy have the strength to hold something so strong? After the web between his thumb and index finger was split open, he was immediately dumbfounded when he saw the thing on the ground. Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Scram!" Then, he flew over and kicked the boy's abdomen. "Ah!" The boy screamed, and his body flew up. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. When he hit the ground, he spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted on the spot. The faces of the two Shi brothers twitched. They didn't think that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't even let a child go. This was too cruel. Shi Xiaotian's eyes flashed, and he suddenly shouted, "Boss, be careful." Although the boy didn't succeed in his sneak attack, he had bought time for his master. Ling Shi saw that Yu Qianqiu had kicked his disciple away, and it just so happened that Yu Qianqiu's back was facing him. He instantly felt that this opportunity couldn't be missed, and he fiercely stabbed with his sword. Hearing Shi Xiaotian's warning, Yu Qianqiu didn't see what was happening behind him. He could easily guess what Ling Shi was going to do. He loudly shouted, "Go to hell." He fiercely swung his sword and turned around. Immediately, he saw his opponent's long sword stabbing towards his abdomen. A hint of fierceness flashed in his eyes. Ignoring the sword that was stabbing towards him, he gripped his sword with both hands and ruthlessly chopped at his opponent's head. No! Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but scream when he saw that his boss was going to suffer serious injuries even if he didn't die. He still wanted to take his opponent's life. However, he didn't know that Ling Shi was even more shocked. He thought that even if he couldn't kill his opponent, he could still force him to retreat and create an opportunity for himself to escape. However, this guy was simply a lunatic, and didn't care about life or death at all. "I have a feud with you for killing my father. Is it worth it for you to do this?" As this thought flashed through his mind, Ling Shi hurriedly withdrew his sword and fiercely retreated. Bang! Yu Qianqiu went berserk. He couldn't control his sword, and the corner of the wall on one side of the room collapsed, nearly burying Ling Shi. The latter trembled with fear as he looked behind him. There was no way out anymore. In front of him, Yu Qianqiu stepped on the collapsed brick wall and passed through the rising dust. Wielding his sword, he pressed forward with a murderous aura. "Fight!" Ling Shi fiercely brandished his sword and stabbed forward. A cold light flashed before his eyes, and with a clang, the sword in his hand trembled. Then, it disappeared without a trace. A cold sword was placed against his neck. "Stop! I'll give it to you!" Ling Shi hurriedly shouted. Yu Qianqiu cackled and said, "Even if I kill you, the item will still be mine." Ling Shi bitterly smiled. "If you kill me, I guarantee that you won't be able to find it. The item has been hidden by me." Yu Qianqiu frowned and stared at Ling Shi for a while. Suddenly, he withdrew the sword against Ling Shi's neck and said coldly, "Stop wasting time. Hand over the item, and I won't kill you." Chapter 32. Ling Shi was stunned. He didn't expect his opponent to agree so easily. He asked in astonishment, "Aren't you afraid that I'll run away?" "Run? You can try. I can also guarantee that you will suffer a fate worse than death." Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully and impatiently said, "Take out the item. I don't want to repeat myself a third time." Ling Shi sighed. No matter how good the item was, it wasn't as important as his life. After thinking about it, he didn't have the confidence that he could escape. He could only nod silently and step on the collapsed bricks as he walked out. Yu Qianqiu retreated and stared at him coldly. Although he said that he would let his opponent go, he still maintained a certain level of vigilance. He followed Ling Shi to the main hall and looked around. The Daoist temple was simple and didn't have many decorations. In the center, there was a deity worshipped, but he couldn't recognize who it was. A large praying mat below attracted Yu Qianqiu's attention. His eyelids twitched as he thought to himself, could the immortal supporting token be hidden here? While Ling Shi was still sighing, Yu Qianqiu took a few steps forward and grabbed the praying mat. The former's expression instantly changed. Hua! The praying mat was torn apart, and 2 items fell to the ground. The buckwheat husks inside were scattered all over the ground. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Ling Shi and slowly picked up the 2 items. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian also came in. His boss's ferocity just now was deeply engraved in his heart, but he didn't know why his boss would fight with his life on the line. Seeing Yu Qianqiu playing with the 2 items in his hands, and then looking at Ling Shi's reluctant gaze, Shi Xiaotian's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that boss is fighting so hard just to snatch other people's items? Yu Qianqiu carefully examined the items in his hands. The 2 items were a wooden token and a jade plate. The wooden token was simple and unadorned, and its sides were engraved with patterns. On one side, the words, "Supporting Immortals," were engraved. On the other side, the image of an island was engraved. Releasing his divine sense to investigate, he could feel a roaming wave of true qi. Clearly, it was injected by someone. Needless to say, this was the so-called Supporting Immortals token. The words 100 Flowers Valley were engraved on the Jade Archive. There was also a surge of Jinqi that had been channeled into the Jade Archive. There was nothing special about the rest of it, and no one knew what it was used for. Yu Qianqiu looked at the Spirit Stone and asked, "What is this thing used for?" Spirit Stone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect that the thing he had spent so much effort to hide would be found out so quickly. He had thought that no one would notice where he had hidden it. Hearing Yu Qianqiu's question and looking at the thing in his hand, he was slightly taken aback. "You don't even know about the 100 Flowers Valley. Is it famous?" Holding the Jade Archive, Yu Qianqiu gave Shi Xiaotian a questioning look. The latter also shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. He couldn't help but ask in a deep voice, "Am I asking you, or are you asking me?" Spirit Stone was taken aback. He thought to himself that he had tolerated it. It was his own fault for not being able to defeat Shi Xiaotian. Sighing, he explained, "This is the entrance token to the 100 Flowers Valley. The 100 Flowers Valley is a marketplace for cultivators of the Huaxia Empire. As long as you can afford it, you can buy almost anything there. You can also exchange items for items of similar value." "Oh, that's a good place. Give me the 100 Flowers token as well," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. "Ah!" Spirit Stone exclaimed, "What's the use of my 100 Flowers token? This thing is just a proof to avoid being interrogated when entering the 100 Flowers Valley in the future. Any cultivator who enters or exits the 100 Flowers Valley, regardless of their level, can register and claim it. It's useless to take someone else's token." "I see." Yu Qianqiu nodded and asked, "Where are the locations of Fuxian Island and the 100 Flowers Valley?" You don't even know this." Spirit Stone looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He really wondered if Yu Qianqiu was a cultivator. What? You have a problem with that? Don't you know what it means to be shameless to ask your subordinates? Although Yu Qianqiu said so, he was also lamenting in his heart that he was indeed inexperienced. He was a complete rookie in the cultivation world. Rolling his eyes at Spirit Stone, he thought to himself, this guy is a little useful. Spirit Stone decided not to say it. He thought, whatever you say is right, why should I ask for a rebuff? Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and paced around. He thought for a while and said to Shi Xiaotian, I'm leaving. Where are you going? The 100 Flowers Valley or Fuxian Island? I'm going too. Shi Xiaotian said. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, there's only one Fuxian token. You go back first. After I find the Foundation Establishment pill, I'll come find you. Don't worry. I won't forget you. Shi Xiaotian was silent. After a long time, he nodded and said, I understand. I'll wait for you. Boss, be careful. After that, he walked out of the main hall and called his big brother who was hiding at the side. Spirit Stone saw the boy lying on the ground. He went to check, but there was no breath. Yu Qianqiu kicked him to death. Spirit Stone shook his head and sighed. Is he dead? Yu Qianqiu asked indifferently. Spirit Stone nodded his head heavily. It could be seen that he wasn't very sad. To a cultivator, killing a commoner wasn't a big deal. Yu Qianqiu weighed the 100 Flowers token in his hand and handed it over with a smile. He said, I'll return it to you. Ling Shi stood up, his gaze lingering on the other immortal supporting medallion. He shook his head helplessly and extended his hand to accept the 100-flower medallion. Suddenly, his wrist tightened. The hand that was handing over the medallion had already grabbed his wrist. Ling Shi turned pale with fright and shouted angrily, You didn't keep your word. Before he could finish speaking, his vision suddenly blurred, and the scene changed. After pulling Spirit Stone into the Golden Pearl, Yu Qianqiu laughed and let go of him. Spirit Stone looked around and shouted, Where is this? Let me out. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, You should feel honored. This is my territory. Ordinary people don't have the fortune to enter. You untrustworthy and despicable person. You promised that as long as I handed over the Fuxian token, you would let me go. Why did you imprison me? Spirit Stone pointed his finger and cursed. No, you're mistaken. Don't you think that I did what I promised you? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, First, I only said that I wouldn't kill you if you handed over the token. I didn't say that I would let you go. That's why you are still alive and well. Second, you didn't hand over the token. I found it myself. If you think about it carefully, you will know that I wasn't talking nonsense. Just based on this, I won't be breaking my promise if I kill you. Sophistry, I will fight you to the death. Spirit Stone Immortal roared and fiercely pounced over, fiercely hacking his palm towards Yu Qianqiu. The latter smiled and disappeared. Spirit Stone missed. A mocking laugh came from behind him. If I want to kill you, it will be as easy as flipping my hand. If you want to kill me, it will be as difficult as ascending to heaven. So, I advise you not to waste your energy. Spirit Stone was so angry that he cried out. He turned and pounced at Yu Qianqiu again. However, no matter what he did, Yu Qianqiu always disappeared with a smile. This went on for a long time. Suddenly, Spirit Stone seemed to think of something. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and shouted, Form displacement transposition. Is this the form displacement transposition that only a cultivator at the end of the crossing tribulation stage can use? This. How is this possible? Could it be that you have been hiding your cultivation? No. This is impossible. Although Spirit Stone said it was impossible, after he calmed down, he felt a little afraid. Regardless of whether this was really form displacement transposition, with Xiao Chen's cultivation, killing him would be as easy as flipping his hand. It turned out that Xiao Chen had been playing with him in the Daoist temple. Thinking of this, Spirit Stone's heart turned cold. Finally, he lowered his hands, no longer thinking of fighting with his life on the line. Of course, Yu Qianzhou wouldn't tell him that he could go wherever he wanted here. He smiled mysteriously and said, knowing that it's impossible, but not doing it. This is what a smart person would do. Spirit Stone Immortal, go over there and see what's over there. After saying that, he pointed at a mountain of cloth bags. Spirit Stone raised his head and looked in the direction he was pointing. He looked at Xiao Chen suspiciously. In the end, he walked to the foot of the mountain. Many of the cloth bags were open, revealing spirit stones. It was as if they were things that no one wanted and were casually thrown there. Could this mountain be made of spirit stones? Spirit Stone Immortal was shocked. He had never seen so many spirit stones before. Yu Qianzhou suddenly appeared beside him and said with a smile, "That's right. These are all spirit stones. They are all mine. Now you should know which one of us is worthy of being called Spirit Stone Immortal." Ah! Spirit Stone Immortal was now completely convinced. He couldn't beat Xiao Chen in a fight, but Xiao Chen could use money to crush him. He couldn't help but reveal an embarrassed expression. He said embarrassedly, "My name is Ji Wushuang. After I left supporting Immortal Island, I wandered into Spirit Stone Temple. That's why people respectfully called me Spirit Stone Immortal." There were some things that he didn't say. After he chased away the original owner of Spirit Stone Temple, he became Spirit Stone Immortal. Yu Qianzhou kept staring at Spirit Stone Immortal's expression. He was very satisfied with the current effect. This was the effect he wanted when he brought Spirit Stone Immortal here. Yu Qianzhou had no experience in the cultivation world, so he needed such a person to be his follower. As for Spirit Stone Immortal's trivial matters, he couldn't be bothered. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, "What Spirit Stone Immortal? Chicken is peerless and duck is peerless. It sounds so bad. I'll change your name. I guarantee it will sound better than now. Change my name." Spirit Stone Immortal asked in astonishment. "Why? You don't want to?" Yu Qianzhou shouted in a deep voice. Spirit Stone Immortal shook his head silently. He didn't agree, but he also didn't say that he didn't agree. Anyone would feel uncomfortable changing their name again and again. Yu Qianzhou stared at Spirit Stone Immortal's red face and 3 strands of long beard. He blushed and said, "From now on, you will be called Guan Yu." Guan Yu's courtesy name is Yunchang. It means Guan as in gate, Yu as in feather, Yun as in white cloud, and Long as in long. What do you think of this name? Guan Yu, courtesy name is Yunchang. Spirit Stone Immortal couldn't figure out why he chose this name. He muttered a few times but couldn't find anything special about it. He was puzzled and asked, "Why did you choose this name?" Yu Qianzhou chuckled and made a mighty pose of wielding the green dragon crescent blade. He said, "Don't you think this name is very mighty, very bold, and very weighty?" Spirit Stone Immortal shook his head and muttered, "I can't tell. Guan Yu, how weighty can a feather be? Looks like this guy isn't too satisfied." Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and chuckled. He said, "As long as you promise to use this name in the future, I can also guarantee that you will succeed in building your foundation within 10 years. Really?" Spirit Stone Immortal's eyes lit up. He said happily, As long as you can really help me succeed in building my foundation within 10 years, I promise that I will never change my name from now on, Guan Yu. If I can't do it, I will naturally change my name back. It's a deal. It's a deal. Both of them laughed loudly. Yu Qianqiu happily patted his shoulder and said, Guan Yu, from now on, you will follow me well. I guarantee that you will eat and drink well every day. Sooner or later, you will cultivate to the tribulation passing stage. Spirit Stone nodded and smiled. He didn't know why this guy was so happy just because he changed his name. Sigh. Sure enough, experts all have some strange hobbies. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased. In his previous life, he had offered countless incense sticks to Second Master Guan and kowtowed countless times, but in the end, he still died. Now, he got Guan Yu as his follower. He believed that he would definitely be very impressive when he went out. No. When we go out, I have to order a set of green robes and a green hat for him to wear. Then, I have to carry a long sword on my waist and hold the hilt of the sword in my hand while following behind me. This way, I will look impressive, scary, and awesome when I go out. Chapter 33. Although he was pleased with himself, he did not believe that a few simple promises could completely subdue a person. It was necessary to use the necessary methods. He still had to ask the white fox about this. With a thought, the entire space within the golden bead appeared in his mind, including every blade of grass and every tree. After reaching the 10th level of qi refining, the territory inside the golden bead had expanded by dozens of times. What made Yu Qianqiu pleasantly surprised was that small streams and lakes began to appear in his territory. Because of this, he purposely got a lot of different kinds of fish to raise, birds, beasts, flowers, and plants. The bamboo pavilion was empty. Sister Bai must have gone to play with the flowers and plants again. It was already slowly changing. This was a good thing. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth slightly curled up, revealing a smile. His thoughts changed. In a flower bed, the white fox in snow-white clothes was squatting in the flower bed, pulling out the weeds. Guan Yu held a pile of high-grade spirit stones and smacked her lips, asking, I still haven't asked how I should address you. Yu Qianqiu, you can call me boss from now on. Yu Qianqiu replied, then immediately said, wait here, I'll be back soon. After saying that, his figure disappeared. Guan Yu did not deny it and sneered, Yu Qianqiu, boss, beauty, pulling out the weeds again. Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared beside the white fox in the flower bed. The latter seemed to be used to this. She did not even raise her head and was still busy with her work. She only frowned and asked, why did you bring someone in again? Sister, don't be offended. It's just that the territory is getting bigger and bigger, so I specially found someone to plant trees. Yu Qianqiu casually replied. The white fox did not say anything else. The former squatted beside her and smiled, Sister, let me ask you something. I want to control someone and make him loyal to me. Do you have any ideas? The white fox stopped what she was doing and frowned, who do you want to control? Hey! It's this guy I brought in. Just now, we were fighting with our lives on the line outside. Your little brother, almost died in his hands. I brought him in here. If he can't beat me, he'll surrender. But who knows if he's sincere or just pretending? Yu Qianqiu said worriedly. White Fox's complexion changed when she heard that her brother had almost been killed. She raised her beautiful face and saw that the corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth was clearly stained with blood. His clothes were also torn. It was obvious that he had fought with someone and was injured. She immediately snorted coldly and disappeared. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Suddenly, a scream came from afar. While he was still in shock, the white fox appeared out of nowhere with a low-grade spirit stone in her hand. She said coldly, "I've trapped his Yuanshan here, you can use it without worry. If he dares to have any other thoughts, I'll make him suffer a fate worse than death." After he finished speaking, a ball of flames appeared in his hand and wrapped around the spirit stone. Immediately, a series of wails came from afar. The flames disappeared, and the wailing stopped. The white fox placed the spirit stones into the small sachet on its waist. Oh my God! So powerful! Luckily, he didn't do anything to Sister White. Otherwise, if he did, it would be fun. Yu Qianqiu's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He smiled awkwardly. "Sister, you're really good. I wonder if you can teach me. If your cultivation hasn't reached the original infant stage, you can't forcefully extract other people's Yuanshan. Also, the caster's cultivation must be higher than the caster's unless the caster is willing to give up their Yuanshan." After the white fox finished speaking, she squatted down and continued with her work. Hee. I'll go see how he's doing." Seeing that she ignored him, Yu Qianqiu glanced at the white robe wrapped around her buttocks. Because she was working, his little heart skipped a beat. He thought to himself, what a sexy buttocks. His figure suddenly disappeared. Guan Yu's red face had already turned pale. He sat on the ground and stared blankly at Yu Qianqiu's appearance. He scrambled to hug his thigh and trembled. "There's a woman. There's a woman here who forcefully extracted my Yuanshan." Yu Qianqiu, no. Boss. Do you know her? Help me beg her to return my Yuanshan. Guan Yu was indeed scared out of his wits. When the woman in white first appeared, he was still amazed by her beauty. Who would have thought that the sudden burst of aura would force him to the point that he could not even move? She placed one hand on his head and easily pulled out his natal primordial spirit. The pain was simply worse than death. He was very clear that if his Yuanshan was controlled by someone, it meant that his life was in someone else's hands. If that person was unhappy, he wouldn't even be able to run. Ah! Yu Qianqiu cried out in alarm. "Your natal primordial spirit was also extracted." Guan Yu's trembling body stopped. He slowly raised his head and said in shock, "Is your Yuanshan also AI?" "Who said it wasn't?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and helped Guan Yu up. "But you don't need to worry. She's my big sister. Since you're one of my people now, I can guarantee that you won't be in danger with your primordial spirit trapped in her hands." "What? She's your sister?" Guan Yu screamed and pushed him away. He shouted, "She's your sister. Of course you don't have to worry." It must be you and your brother who conspired to kill me." "I'll kill you." Guan Yu just waved his palm and took a step forward. The muscles on his face twisted and he fell to the ground with a bang. A miserable scream came from his throat. He rolled around on the ground, looking extremely painful. Even Yu Qianqiu couldn't stand it anymore. The white fox's voice came from the air. "If you dare to have any evil intentions towards my brother again, I'll make your life worse than death." "I won't dare." Guan Yu used all his strength to choke out. Then, his body loosened and he laid on the ground again. It was indeed a good way to control people. But he couldn't discourage him from doing things for him in the future. Yu Qianqiu stared at him. After confirming that he was fine, he sighed. "Yun Chang. You're too impulsive. Do you still remember that 10th level Qi refining cultivator who called me boss? Just like you, his Yuanshan was also extracted by my sister. But he knew how to behave. He knew that my sister liked to take care of flowers and plants. Look at the flowers and trees here. They were all done by him. Guess what happened in the end? My sister was happy and returned his Yuanshan. Now, he's alive and well. Yun Chang. You're worth learning from. Guan Yu, who had been staring at him with dead fish eyes, moved his eyeballs. There was some spirit in them. His Adam's apple trembled as he said, "You're not lying to me." He struggled to get up. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him and snorted. "Do I look like the kind of person who would lie to people so easily?" Guan Yu's gaze fell on the forest. He realized that those trees were indeed not native. There were obviously traces of them being transplanted. He nodded thoughtfully. "Do you know why I named you Guan Yu?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Seeing him shake his head, he asked again, "Do you know that there are other empires outside of the Huaxia Empire?" The latter nodded, indicating that he knew. He asked again, "Then have you been there?" The latter still shook his head. Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief. He sighed. "Let me tell you a story. In the Far East, there was an empire whose regime had decayed. There was a scene of warlords fighting for power. At that time, there were 3 heroes named Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei. The 3 of them became sworn brothers in the Peach Garden. Guan Yu beheaded Yan Liang and Wen Chou. Guan Yu was in the Chao camp, but his heart was in the Han camp. Guan Yu protected his sister-in-law 1,000 miles away, overcame 5 passes, and beheaded 6 generals. Guan Yu dragged his blade to subdue Huang Zhong. Guan Yu went to the battle alone. Guan Yu Maiqing. Let's not talk about it. Anyway, in the end, Guan Yu became a well-known hero in the empire. He was a courageous and loyal hero. Every family offered incense and worshipped him, and people called him Second Master Guan. After he finished, he thought to himself that it was a close call. He almost told them about how Guan Yu was beheaded. Seeing Yu Qianqiu narrate the story so vividly, Guan Yu's chest heaved. He stood up and stared at Yu Qianqiu, scaring the latter. He said slowly, "You're not lying to me, are you? Is there really such a hero?" "What? Am I the kind of person who would lie to others? I swear to God, if I made up Guan Yu's story, I curse myself to be struck by lightning and die a horrible death." Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and swore. He thought to himself, "I don't know if Guan Yu's story is true or not, but I definitely didn't make it up. Since there really is such a heroic person, it's not wrong for me to take his name, it's also fitting. From now on, I'll be called Guan Yu, Guan Yun Chang." After he finished, he stroked his long beard and made a signature gesture of the Guan family that Yu Qianqiu had mentioned. It was quite similar. Chapter 34. Don't talk about useless things. Guan Yunchang did it, not said it. Yu Qianqiu pulled Miao Yi out of the Golden Pearl and back to the Daoist Temple of Spirit Stones. He took out the Jade Archive and handed it to Miao Yi, saying, "First, take me to 100 Flowers Valley for a stroll." Guan Yu took it and saw that the Taoist priest was about to leave. He heaved a long sigh and said, "Wait." Then he walked over to the boy who had been dead for a long time and carried him to the back of the hall to bury him. Yu Qianqiu nodded, thinking that he had some humanity. When the 2 of them reached the foot of the mountain, they found the horse still tied under the tree. Yu Qianqiu untied the reins and mounted it, saying, "Follow me." Then he urged the horse to gallop. "You want me to run on a horse?" Guan Yu's red face was clouded, but his primordial spirit was in the hands of his sister, so he didn't dare to act rashly. He raised his Jinqi to the limit, leaped up, and followed. Yu Qianqiu didn't lead him anywhere else, but back to the capital. They didn't go back to the Pillar of State General's mansion, though. The 2 of them changed out of their tattered clothes and redressed themselves. At Guan Yu's request, Yu Qianqiu spent a lot of effort to dress him up as the Guan Yu from the 3 kingdoms. Guan Yu stood there with a green hat and green robes, a long sword at his waist, and his hand on the hilt of the sword. What an imposing sight! Yu Qianzhou's eyes shone with a strange light. He really was a living Yunchang Guan. But when he thought about how this Guan Yu used to be a Taoist priest and swindled people, he couldn't help but laugh. The owner of the tailor's shop couldn't help but praise, "Sir, you have a good look." Guan Yu couldn't contain his joy, and called for the owner to bring him a bronze mirror. As expected, a red-faced Guan Yu appeared in the mirror, wearing a green robe and a green hat, holding a long sword in his hand. His eyes were closed, but he didn't look angry. He almost couldn't recognize himself. After exiting the tailor's shop, Guan Yu followed beside Yu Qianzhou. He was secretly trying to figure out Yunchang's unparalleled demeanor that boss had mentioned. He held the hilt of his sword and walked forward with his head held high and chest puffed out. When the passers-by saw this, they all looked over and whispered, "This person really looks mighty and extraordinary." Guan Yu's gaze was even more focused. Yu Qianzhou turned his head and took a glance. He was overjoyed and thought to himself, "Who's as awesome as I am?" leading Guan Yu around on the streets. The two of them arrived at the horse market and wanted to buy a horse. After walking around the horse market a few times, Guan Yu still couldn't find a horse that he was satisfied with. Yu Qianzhou became a little impatient and shouted, "Is there a need to go through so much trouble to choose a transportation tool?" Guan Yu stroked his long beard and said slowly, "Didn't you say that Yunchang's horse is called Red Rabbit, and that it's a precious horse that can travel 1,000 miles in a day? Of course I have to choose a good horse." Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes at him and felt a toothache. He blamed himself for reaping what he sowed and was completely speechless. In the end, they really couldn't find that so-called precious horse, so they could only choose a healthy one. Guan Yu sighed endlessly. The two of them got on the horse and went straight out of the city gate, leaving a trail of dust behind them. It was troublesome that he hadn't reached the foundation building stage. Otherwise, if he could fly on a sword, he wouldn't have to go through the pain of running around for days. 10 days later, Guan Yu led Yu Qianzhou to a forest deep in the mountains. Looking around, the mountain road ahead was rugged. It was already impossible to travel on a horse. Yu Qianzhou jumped off the horse and pointed to the depths of the clouds in front of them. He asked, "Is that the 100 Flowers Valley?" "It doesn't look like it. It's impossible to see people in the clouds." Guan Yu also got off the horse and smiled. After spending a few days with Yu Qianzhou, he found that he wasn't the kind of person that was hard to get along with, so he felt a lot more at ease. He explained, "If anyone could see Baihua sect, then wouldn't it be troublesome? Wouldn't even those normal people be able to come and go as they please?" Baihua Palace set up a big formation in the 100 Flowers Valley. The clouds are only a distraction, mainly to stop normal people from going in and out. "Let's go." "But what about these 2 horses?" "What? Are you going to send them to your parents?" "Just leave them here." Yu Qianzhou laughed mockingly. Guan Yu stroked his beard and pondered for a while. Then, he pulled out the long sword from his waist and broke the reins of the 2 horses. He removed the saddles and slashed the horses' buttocks twice. The 2 horses neighed in pain and ran into the deep mountains without any restraint. "Ha! You're quite kind, but there are probably quite a lot of ferocious beasts in this forest. I don't know if they'll be able to live past today." Yu Qianzhou shook his head. Guan Yu was surprised by his words. He looked at the direction the horses ran in and said in a low voice, "They better pray for themselves. This isn't something we can handle. Come on, let's go up the mountain." Before he could finish his words, the sound of horses neighing could be heard, and the 2 horses ran back. Guan Yu was a bit dumbfounded. Yu Qianzhou laughed, "These horses are used to being tamed, they can't survive in the wild. They'll probably run back in fear as soon as they smell the feces of ferocious beasts. Forget it, I'll just be a bit kind." Saying so, he walked up to the two horses and touched them. The two horses disappeared. Seeing that Guan Yu was still in a daze, he waved his hand and said, "What are you spacing out for? Let's go. I've already sent them to my sister's place." Guan Yu shook his head and said, "I'm not in a daze. I'm just wondering who you and your sister are, and where exactly does your sister live?" After saying that, he walked up the mountain with a face full of disbelief. "I'll let you know when I get the chance. Tell me what's going on with this Baihua Palace." Yu Qianqiu followed. Baihua sect was founded not too long ago, less than 200 years ago. Speaking of which, it has something to do with supporting Immortals Island. Baihua sect's sect leader, Baihua Fairy, was originally the daughter of the previous island lord of supporting Immortals Island. Unexpectedly, she married Yan Bugue, the son of the previous palace lord of the number 1 demonic sect, the 10,000 Demons. It caused quite a bit of trouble at the time. On one side was the number 1 righteous sect, and on the other side was the number 1 demonic sect. Under the pressure from both sides, the two sect leaders expelled the couple from their sects, and they both stepped down from their positions. It was here that the couple established their sect, establishing Baihua Palace. Baihua Palace can be considered as an anomaly in the cultivation world. You can't say that it's righteous, nor can you say that it's demonic. Yet, both the righteous and demonic sects have to give it some face. Because of this, the 100 Flowers Valley where Baihua Palace is located has become a trading ground for the cultivation world. Both the righteous and demonic sects don't dare to cause any trouble here, and each goes about their own business. Don't you think it's strange? Hee hee. That's interesting. I'll have to take a good look. Yu Qianqiu laughed. The two of them chatted as they walked, winding their way into the depths of the mountain mist. The thick mist in the mountain was very strange, it didn't disperse even when the wind blew. The two of them stopped in front of the thick mist. Guan Yu took out a jade archive and imbued it with his true qi. The jade archive shot out a beam of white light towards the depths of the mist. The thick mist immediately roiled, gradually parting to reveal a path. Guan Yu instructed, "Don't run around. Just follow the path." The two of them walked along the path, and the mist behind them slowly closed up again. Yu Qianqiu was secretly amazed. Even the most advanced technology in his past life would have a hard time achieving this, right? Not long after, a city gate that wasn't too big appeared in front of them. Several cultivators armed with weapons stood guard at the gate. The cultivators glanced at the two of them, but didn't say anything. However, Guan Yu pulled Yu Qianqiu over and said, "Fellow Taoists, this is my friend's first time here. He needs 100 flowers entrance token." A cultivator sitting behind a table glanced at Yu Qianqiu, then flipped open the booklet on the table. He picked up a brush and asked, "Name? Which sect?" Yu Qianqiu. "I'm a loose cultivator with no sect or sect." Yu Qianqiu answered unhurriedly. Before coming here, Guan Yu had already informed him. Of course, he couldn't possibly say that he was Ong Kuangsung's disciple. 100 flowers entrance token, 1 mid-grade spirit stone, or 100 low-grade spirit stones, the cultivator said plainly. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He pretended to take out a mid-grade spirit stone from his robes and handed it over. Guan Yu's eyelid twitched when he saw this. Only then did he remember that the one thing this guy didn't lack was spirit stones. The cultivator took out a jade archive and let Yu Qianqiu imbue it with true qi. After that, the cultivator made a hand seal and shot a beam of white light at the jade archive. Once the jade archive was handed over to Yu Qianqiu, the matter was settled. "This registration is really simple," Yu Qianqiu muttered as he touched the jade archive in his hand. Guan Yu smiled, "It looks simple, but unless you personally hold the jade archive and imbue it with true qi, you won't be able to barge in." After passing through the city gate, Yu Qianqiu's eyes immediately lit up. He really didn't expect to find such a good place in the depths of the mountains. Shops and taverns stood in great numbers, and hawkers could be seen everywhere. Cultivators dressed in all sorts of clothing came and went. Chapter 35. As the two strolled around the city, Yu Qianqiu looked around. Everything here was new to him. Guan Yu glanced at him. Although his anger had dissipated a lot after getting along with him for a while, he still couldn't help but take it to heart that his primordial spirit was controlled by someone else. He asked, "Are you going to take a look and leave, or are you going to stay here for a few days?" Yu Qianqiu was full of interest. He nodded and said, "Why do you want to leave when you just arrived? Stay a few more days. You're familiar with this place, where do you think is a good place to stay?" Guan Yu inadvertently smiled and said, "Come with me." The two walked forward and passed by a big square. There were many people setting up all kinds of stalls. Guan Yu brought him to the front of an inn. Yu Qianqiu looked around and discovered that the inn in front of him was probably the most imposing one he had seen so far. The signboard above the entrance read, "100 Flowers House." He didn't think too much about it and followed them in. As soon as they entered, a waiter came over and greeted them enthusiastically. "Two guests, are you going to eat or stay?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the waiter and found that he was also Qi training level 7. Guan Yu went to the front of the counter and knocked, calling out, "Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms." The fat man, who was busy at the counter, hurried over. The fat man smiled and said, "The best room costs 10 mid-grade spirit stones a day, and 2 rooms cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones. May I know how long the 2 of you would like to stay?" "How many days?" Guan Yu turned and asked. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while, then he frowned and said, "Are you kidding me? 2 rooms cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones a day. Disciples from normal sects can't even afford a day's stay even with half a year's worth of spirit stones." The fat shopkeeper said, "Little brother, I'm afraid this is your first time here. Our 100 Flowers House was opened by the 100 Flowers Palace, and it's also the best inn in the entire 100 Flowers Valley. If you stay here, you can rest in peace. No matter if it's the righteous Tao or the devil Tao, not many would dare to cause trouble here. Therefore, 20 mid-grade spirit stones a day is definitely worth it." "Humph. If no one dares to come and cause trouble, doesn't that mean there are still people who dare to come and cause trouble?" Yu Qianqiu muttered. When he saw the manager's expression change, he thought about how it wasn't beneficial for him to offend the members of the Flower Palace since he'd just arrived here, so he could only change his words. "Then I'll stay for a day first." The shopkeeper's expression immediately relaxed, and he said with a smile, "Then I'll give the 2 of you 2 superior rooms." Yu Qianqiu nodded and pretended to put his hand into his empty lapel. He took out 2 handfuls of spirit stones and placed them on the counter. When the shopkeeper saw that he was able to grab 2 large handfuls of spirit stones from his flat clothes, he couldn't help but stare at him strangely. Yu Qianqiu's heart trembled, and he thought to himself that he would have to buy a storage bag to show off. After the shopkeeper registered, he called the waiter to bring the 2 of them upstairs. Yu Qianqiu inadvertently glanced at the strange smile on Guan Yu's face. He was slightly startled, and he immediately understood what was going on. "I was wondering why he brought me to such an expensive place. So it turns out that he has a problem with me. Damn it. Do you want me to lose some money? This isn't a good sign, and I have to put it out in time." The place that he spent a lot of money to stay in was indeed different. The items and furnishings in the room were really good. When he opened the window, he saw the square. Looking at the bustling square, Yu Qianqiu was in a good mood. The haze of being schemed against by Guan Yu had also lightened a little. The market of the cultivation world. Let's see what good things they have. Yu Qianqiu muttered a few words, and he slowly walked out of the inn. He walked in the market with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the vendors around him. If one didn't know the situation, who would know that this was the cultivation world? Yu Qianqiu slowly walked from stall to stall, but he didn't find many things that he recognized. When he arrived in front of a stall, he discovered that it was very quiet, completely different from the bustling surroundings. Suddenly, he saw that the table was filled with all kinds of talismans. He couldn't help but stop and ask, "Fellow Daoist, what are these used for?" The stall owner hurriedly stood up, pointed at the talismans, and introduced, "These are smoke talismans. When you encounter danger, they can be used to escape. 1 low-grade spirit stone for 10 of them. These are fire talismans. When you throw one out, it can ignite a 1-meter-tall flame within a 3-meter radius. It can last for 10 breaths of time. 1 low-grade spirit stone for 1. These are arrow talismans. Within a 300-meter radius, it can hit anything. It can penetrate a 1-foot-thick brick wall. 2 low-grade spirit stones for 1. These are Vajra talismans." The more Yu Qianqiu listened, the brighter his eyes became. These were simply good things that were necessary for murder and arson. He couldn't help but carefully size up the stall owner in front of him. He was a young man in his early 20s, a level 8 aura refining cultivator. "Fellow Daoist, do you want to buy them? If you buy more, you can get a lower price," the young cultivator sincerely asked. Yu Qianqiu smiled and asked, "Did you make all these yourself?" The young cultivator nodded and said, "I made them myself. This is a secret technique passed down in my family. If it wasn't for my lack of cultivation and the fact that I can't make more powerful talismans, I wouldn't have been reduced to selling these low-level talismans to make a living." Yu Qianqiu smiled and asked, "What's wrong? Don't you have any relatives in your family?" The young man sadly lowered his head and slightly shook it. "I want to buy them, but I don't know how effective they are," Yu Qianqiu said with a bit of hesitation. The young cultivator became a bit anxious and said, "Fellow Daoist, are you afraid that the talismans I make won't be effective because of my young age? If you don't believe me, we can find a remote place and try it." Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and muttered, "Then let's find a place and try it. If the effect is really good, then I want all of them." "Fellow Daoist, please wait a moment." Hearing that he wanted all the talismans if the effect was good, the young cultivator quickly packed up his stall and led Yu Qianqiu to the outskirts of the small town. Yu Qianqiu looked around and found that it was really remote. He nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "Fellow Daoist, try a few talismans." The young cultivator immediately took out a few different talismans from his bag and displayed them one by one in front of him. The effect was really good. Yu Qianqiu was very happy and couldn't help but feel strange and asked, "I see that your stall is deserted. It seems like there isn't even anyone looking. Could it be that the talismans you make are so unattractive?" The young cultivator slowly lowered his head and replied honestly, "This is the first day I've set up a stall here. Many people were very enthusiastic when they first saw the talismans, but once they heard that I made them, they didn't want to buy them. Because talismans are usually made by people with higher cultivation, so..." His voice lowered. Yu Qianqiu understood what he meant and thought that this unlucky child was too honest. Couldn't he just say that it was his father or master who made them? "Fellow Daoist, just treat it as helping me. You saw the power of my talismans earlier. Talismans of the same level aren't any weaker than others. If you buy more, I will definitely give you the lowest price. Otherwise, I won't even be able to pay for tomorrow's stall," the young cultivator said in a pleading tone. "All right. I want all of them." Yu Qianqiu patted his shoulder and said as he looked around. The young cultivator happily nodded his head. However, he heard the buyer pat his shoulder and say, "I want you too." Before he could react, he felt his vision blur. Chapter 36. Yu Qianqiu looked around again, walked back with his hands behind his back, and murmured, "Young man, follow me from now on. I promise you'll eat and drink well every day. Someone in my previous life said it well. What's the most expensive thing in this century? Talent. Damn it. Only today did I realize I have the potential to be a talent scout, what a pity." He wandered back to the market, saw the young cultivator's empty stall, and couldn't help but smile. He continued to wander between the stalls. "Fellow Daoist. Where can I buy a storage bag?" Yu Qianqiu finally met a cultivator that he could confirm was of a lower level than him, and asked him. The cultivator smiled and said, "Storage bags are relatively high-grade items, you can't buy them from the stalls. You'll have to go to the surrounding stalls to find them." Yu Qianqiu looked around at the well-decorated stalls, and cupped his hands in thanks. Passing through the square, he looked at the stalls one by one, and found that the items here were clearly marked, but the prices were indeed not comparable to the stalls outside, and some were even scarily expensive. After walking through a few stalls, he didn't find any storage bags, and under the guidance of others, he finally found a shop called Hidden Secrets Pavilion, and indeed found the storage bag he wanted to buy. The shopkeeper inside greeted enthusiastically, "Fellow Daoist, what would you like to buy?" Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, "I want to buy a storage bag." The shopkeeper laughed and said, "Fellow Daoist, you've come to the right place. Our sex storage bags are famous in the cultivation world, they are durable, and one can be used for 100 or 200 years without a problem. How big do you want? Our store has storage bags that can hold up to 3 rooms. What's the price?" "Forget it, just give me the cheapest one." Yu Qianqiu said, he was just using it for show anyway, there was no need to waste money, no matter how rich he was, he wouldn't do what that prodigal did. The shopkeeper was slightly stunned, this was the first time he met someone who spoke so straightforwardly, and said with a slightly embarrassed smile, "The cheapest one is naturally the one with a room, it's 1 high-grade spirit stone." 1 high-grade spirit stone. So expensive. "Shopkeeper, you didn't lie to me, did you?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed. The shopkeeper didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fellow Daoist must be joking. This shop has been in business for hundreds of years and storage bags have always been sold at this price. If you don't believe me, you can go out and ask around. Forget it. Since it's a time-honored brand, there's no need to ask. Give me one. After saying that, he took out a high-grade spirit stone. After receiving the storage bag, Yu Qianqiu still mumbled, "Such a small bag actually costs a high-grade spirit stone." After hanging the bag on his waist, he didn't even need to look to know that it was a cultivator. After leaving the Hidden Secret Pavilion, Yu Qianqiu continued to stroll around one shop after another. He discovered one thing, and that was that almost all of the famous sects in the cultivation world had a shop here. He wondered if there was a shop owned by Onquangsung. After strolling around, he finally saw Onquangsung's logo in front of a shop. He didn't know what Onquangsung had for sale, and what was on sale inside. He wanted to go in, but he was afraid of bumping into someone he knew. He shook his head, safety first. It was better not to go in. "Junior Marshal Sister. Come here quickly. Our Onquangsung shop is here." Yu Qianqiu didn't walk far when he suddenly heard a familiar voice, and he turned to look. Hey! The world was really small, there would be no meeting without enmity. It was really an old acquaintance, the direct grandson of Onquangsung's sect leader, Lu Jingguang. He didn't know who that junior martial sister was, but he felt that her back was somewhat familiar. After thinking for a while, he resisted the urge to go over and mock Lu Jingguang. Although this was 100 Flower Palace's territory, and no one dared to fight, he couldn't beat him. Running over to show off his tongue wasn't something a hero would do. After thinking about it, it would be better to wait until he had the strength to beat someone up in the future. The mountains didn't change, and the rivers flowed, there would always be a time when he met him and took care of him. After strolling around the stalls for a while, he bought a bunch of things that he didn't know if they were useful or not. In any case, after buying things that he was interested in, the sky gradually darkened, and he slowly walked back to 100 Flower House. When he walked to Guan Yu's room, he found that Guan Yu was still sleeping soundly on the bed. He couldn't help but sigh. This was the sorrow of refining Qi level 10. If you couldn't break through to the foundation building stage, then what was the point of cultivating? It was no different from eating and waiting for death. Yun Chang, wake up. This boss will take you to eat and drink. Yu Qianqiu used his foot to wake Guan Yu up. The two went downstairs of 100 Flower House and ordered a bunch of food. Looking at the table full of food, Yu Qianqiu ordered whatever was good. He might be stingy with other things, but he would never treat himself unfairly when it came to food. Drinking big bowls of wine and eating big pieces of meat, it felt so good. The stalls outside were lit up, and even the stalls in the square had become a night market. The two ate and drank, enjoying the scenery outside. Junior Marshal sister, come quickly. This is the best inn in the 100 Flowers Valley, 100 Flower House. Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms. He heard that familiar voice again. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look. It was really a small world for enemies. It was that guy Lu Jingguang again, leaning on the counter to pick a room. Forget it, I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to look away, a young girl walked in the door, and he couldn't look away. It was none other than the woman he was most familiar with in Onquangsong, Chu Ping. As Chu Ping looked around and sized up 100 Flower House, she also saw that familiar face near the window. Chu Ping couldn't believe it. She thought to herself, am I seeing things? Isn't he dead? The two just looked at each other. Yu Qianqiu pouted and gestured at Lu Jingguang. He put a finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. Chu Ping's face immediately lit up, and her eyes showed unconcealable excitement. The other party's actions undoubtedly proved his identity. She looked at Lu Jingguang and knew what he was referring to. She nodded slightly. The two booked a room and were brought upstairs by the staff. On the way upstairs, Chu Ping couldn't help but look at him again. Yu Qianqiu smiled and pointed at himself, then upstairs, telling her that he was also staying upstairs. Chu Ping walked up with light steps. Seeing that Lu Jingguang had also gone upstairs, Yu Qianqiu felt a chill run down his spine. He actually dared to get a room with his chick. He must be tired of living. Then he remembered that Lu Jingguang had booked 2 rooms, and he felt a little better. However, he still couldn't swallow his anger. Guan Yu used his chopsticks to knock on Yu Qianqiu's chopsticks. He smiled and said, "Boss, she's already upstairs. Are you still in a daze? Why? Have you fallen for her?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes at him. At this time, a guest at the table next to them turned around and said, "Young man, you have to look carefully. That's Onquangsong's man. Onquangsong is now a big deal. You can't just mess with him." Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at the guest behind him, then glanced at the simple dishes on the table. He smiled and said, "If you don't mind, please come over and have a drink with me. I have something to ask." The person was a slightly sloppy old man. He laughed and said, "Then I won't stand on ceremony." He stood up. Yu Qianqiu smiled and stretched out his hand. "Please." The old man came over and sat down. Yu Qianqiu poured him a glass of wine and toasted him together with Guan Yu. After the old man ate a few mouthfuls of food, Yu Qianqiu said respectfully, "I heard from you that Onquangsong is now a big deal. I'm ignorant, so I hope you can enlighten me." Chapter 37. I can't say that I'm teaching you, I've only heard about it from the grapevine. However, in recent years, Kwang-sung has been stirring up chaos in the cultivation world. The cause of this matter seems to be the Phantom Palace robbing Kwang-sung of a batch of spirit stones. The old man said. Yu Chincho's eyelids twitched and asked, "Is the palace lord of Phantom Palace called 100 Charm Beauty?" Yes. The old man nodded and sighed. Phantom Palace is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. But for some reason, they actually mustered a large force to rob Kwang-sung's spirit stones mine. Kwang-sung has been silent in the cultivation world for many years, and his disciples are said to be getting worse with each generation. But this matter completely angered Kwang-sung. Rumor has it that Kwang-sung's back mountain has more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. This is more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. Looking at the entire righteous and devil Dao, how many sects can take out such a number? These people brought nearly 100 nascent soul stage elders to attack the Demon Illusion Palace. In just half a day, the Demon Illusion Palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Path, was removed from the list. The palace master and several elders were severely wounded and disappeared. So powerful, Guan Yu said in shock. Yu Qianqiu didn't have much of an idea of the so-called strength of the various sects in the cultivation world, but he didn't expect that the righteous Dao, which is ranked 6th, would attack the devil Dao, which is ranked 5th in less than half a day. After staying in Kwang-sung for so long, he only knew that Kwang-sung was ranked 6th. As for how strong the 6th was, he was completely clueless. However, the Phantom Palace was also quite unlucky. They wanted to rob spirit stones, but they didn't manage to do so. All the spirit stones went into other people's pockets. In the end, they brought disaster upon themselves. It was just a pity that the beautiful palace mistress was gone. He wondered how she was doing now. Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly at the thought of the huge pile of spirit stones in his hands, and the food and drinks in front of him were all exchanged with those spirit stones. This Kwang-sung is really amazing. Not only the Phantom Palace, but also some of the small devil sects that have offended Kwang-sung in recent years have all been eradicated. Kwang-sung's series of actions were truly amazing. The balance of power in the entire cultivation world has been completely broken. I'm afraid that this rare peace in the cultivation world will set off another storm. The old man shook his head. He ate a mouthful of food and drank a glass of wine. He glanced at Yu Qianqiu and teased, "That's why I told you not to provoke Kwang-sung." "Of course not. I just took a second glance at him because he's so pretty." Yu Qianqiu replied awkwardly. Seeing Guan Yu and the old man laughing wretchedly, he couldn't help but change the topic and asked, "Senior, you have an extraordinary appearance. May I ask which sect are you from?" The smile on the old man's face froze. He touched his face and looked at himself. He said, "You're such a hypocrite. This is the first time I've heard someone say that I have an extraordinary appearance." Yu Qianqiu quickly said, "I'm talking about inner qualities, inner qualities." Guan Yu laughed quietly at the side. "Oh. It seems that this old man is ignorant and inexperienced. It turns out that you can use extraordinary appearance to describe inner qualities. Forget it. I won't argue with you because of the good wine and dishes. This old man is 10,000 demons Chiu Yuan." The old man said indifferently. Guan Yu was shocked and said, "You're from the number 1 devil sect, 10,000 demons. Why? This old man is from 10,000 demons. What's wrong with that?" Chiu Yuan said as he glanced at Yu Qianqiu. He felt strange. He had noticed that this young man in front of him was a cultivator, but he couldn't see through his cultivation. This was really strange. Could it be that this young man's cultivation was higher than his? Yu Qianqiu didn't know what Chiu Yuan was thinking. He didn't mind which sect 10,000 demons belonged to. To him, the so-called devil sect was similar to the mafia. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior Cho. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about you." Chiu Wuyuan's face twitched and said, "What are you talking about? Have you heard of this old man's name?" This old man is so stubborn. He knows that I'm just being polite, but he doesn't give me any face." Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Let's not talk about it. Let's drink and eat." After eating and drinking, the two of them politely sent Chiu Wuyuan out of 100 Flowers' house. After that, Yu Qianqiu wanted to go upstairs to meet his goddess sister. However, he was stopped by Guan Yu and wanted to go to the night market. He didn't have the mood to do that, but it was still early. Lu Jingguang might still be with Chu Ping, so he listened to Guan Yu and the two of them strolled around with full stomachs. Guan Yu suddenly saw the pouch on Yu Qianqiu's waist. His eyes lit up and he said, "I've never used a storage pouch. I want one too." "Oh. Go buy one then. I'll just walk around here. Come back and find me." Yu Qianqiu nodded. Guan Yu stretched out his hand and said, "Give it to me." "Give what?" "Spiritual stones to buy a storage pouch." "Damn. You live and eat from me. Don't you think it's too much to ask for pocket money from me? Didn't you say you'll be my boss and let me follow you? Also, the spiritual stones I have are not enough to buy a storage pouch. You're not so stingy as a boss, right? You have so many." Yu Qianqiu quickly interrupted, "All right, stop yelling. I'll give it to you." He pretended to take out a high-grade spiritual stone from his storage pouch. Guan Yu took the spiritual stone and shook his head, "It's not enough. Give me more. The 100 Flowers Valley has a lot of exotic flowers and plants. I want to buy some seeds for your sister. Buy a gift for my sister. Don't tell me you like my sister. I advise you to give up on this idea. If she's not happy, you'll be in trouble." Yu Qianqiu said suspiciously. "Don't let your imagination run wild. Didn't you say your sister likes flowers and plants? Do you want me to learn from her?" Guan Yu said. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He remembered that he did say that to him. It turned out that he was reaping what he sowed. He took out a handful of spiritual stones with a pained expression and gritted his teeth. "You really don't know the cost of daily necessities. Go back after you're done. I'm not going to shop anymore." He turned around and left. His good mood was ruined by Guan Yu. "Which room is Chu Ping staying in?" Yu Qianqiu paced back and forth in the hallway of the upper room of 100 Flowers Valley. He just asked the shopkeeper downstairs, but the shopkeeper told him with a smile that he couldn't tell him. Just looking at Chu Pinger made people think of her beautiful figure. It really made people anxious. Without a choice, Yu Qianqiu looked around to make sure there was no one around. He tiptoed and pressed his face against the door to eavesdrop one by one. After 7 or 8 rooms, he heard Lu Jingguang's fawning voice in front of one of the rooms. Seeing that the room was right next to his, he couldn't help but press his ear against it to hear what he was saying. Chapter 38. Inside the room, Chu Ping sat on both sides of a bright carved round table, quietly listening to Lu Jingguang's flattering words. Looking at Lu Jingguang's uncontrollable arrogant expression, she sighed in her heart. Was this still the senior brother Lu that she had dreamed of? In her impression, senior brother Lu had an elegant temperament, was gentle and kind, and was the dream lover of all the female disciples of Ong Kuang-tsang. She didn't know when it started, but she had slowly grown tired of him. Looking at the face that she had once thought was the most handsome in the world, Chu Ping's eyes slowly moved away, and an ordinary face quietly appeared in her heart. In the forbidden pool, he was so scared that he hugged his clothes and hid. After that, he stopped a man with a bloody nose. At that time, the man was so scared that he couldn't speak properly. He looked so stupid in his panic. In the end, he actually got kicked down the mountain by him. But how could she blame herself for that? At that time, he was alone. She couldn't help but misunderstand, and it was a deep misunderstanding. She even had the urge to kill him. If it wasn't for the peeping in the forbidden cave, she didn't know how long she would have misunderstood. Elder Hao's death, that silent cry, and the blood he spat out, all showed his true feelings. Just think about it, how could such a person do such a dirty thing? Facing the sect leader without fear, facing him bluntly, how many disciples of Ong Kwangsung could do that? Facing the scolding of trash, how many people could do that? If it wasn't for senior brother Lu's palm, Ong Kwangsung probably wouldn't know that he was the kind of person who was willing to live in obscurity. Facing the song that was sung all over the world, he clearly knew that he was the one who composed it, but he didn't seek fame or profit, turning a deaf ear to it. If I didn't know, if I didn't expose it in front of you, would you continue to hide it like this? When I saw your helpless and miserable smile in the spirit stone mine, do you know how much my heart hurt? When I heard that you were killed by the demonic path in the spirit stone mine, do you know how many times I cried for you in the middle of the night? Do you know how happy I am to see you appear in front of me silently again today? He actually lived here as well. Could this be the so-called fate? Recalling Yu Qianzhou's sign language, Chu Ping'er smiled. As for what Lu Jingguang was saying, it could be said that he wasn't listening at all. Yu Qianzhou and Lu Jingguang, who were eavesdropping outside the door, naturally did not know what she was thinking. If Yu Qianzhou found out about it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Jingguang also noticed that his junior sister was a little distracted. He was slightly stunned and stopped talking. But Chu Ping'er was still in a trance. Lu Jingguang's face showed a hint of anger. As the direct grandson of the Azure Light sect leader, his status could be said to be extraordinary. Which of the female disciples in the sect did not secretly have a crush on him? The woman in front of him was also the same. He knew all of this, but he had a long-term ambition, wholeheartedly devoting himself to cultivation. When he was successful and famous, these female disciples would be at his mercy. Not so long ago, Chu Ping'er actually distanced herself from him. The way she looked at him also lost that strange look. Finally, she attracted his attention. Compared to the other female disciples, she was the most outstanding one. The most outstanding female disciple actually lost interest in him. This was undoubtedly a provocation to him, who was used to being high and mighty. How could he bear it? Therefore, he took the initiative to approach Chu Ping'er. But the result of his pursuit was that he seemed to be getting further and further away. Thinking of this, Lu Jingguang's facial muscles twitched. He took a deep breath and adjusted his emotions. He picked up the teacup on the table and touched it lightly. The sound of the teacup woke up Chu Ping'er from her trance. Lu Jingguang smiled and said gently, "Junior sister. The whole of Ong Kwangsung knows my feelings for you. Don't tell me you don't know." Chu Ping'er hesitated for a moment and nodded lightly. This time, she followed Lu Jingguang out to play alone under the persuasion of Grandmaster Lu Wanqian. Before she came, Grandmaster had already made it clear that he hoped that she and Lu Jingguang could become cultivation partners. Due to the pressure from Grandmaster, she was already prepared to yield. What else could she do if she didn't yield? In Ong Kwangsung, there were some things that a lowly disciple like her could not decide. But she never expected to meet Senior Uncle Yu, who should have been dead a long time ago, here. "Bastard, you really want to woo my girl? How could you say such a disgusting confession? I'm so angry. My dear fairy sister, for the sake of the next generation of the cultivation world, you must hold your ground. Outside the door, Yu Qianqiu listened to her and cursed under his breath. Seeing that Chu Ping'er was unmoved, Lu Jingguang frowned and took out a long jade archive. He said, "Junior sister. Take a look at this." Chu Ping'er reached out and took it. Turning it over and over, she said doubtfully, "It looks very ordinary. It's neither too long nor too short. I can't tell what's so special about it." Outside the door, Yu Qianqiu's expression changed. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't defeat Lu Jingguang, he would have kicked the door open to see what the adulterous couple was up to. He thought to himself, "Lu Jingguang, don't tell me you've even taken out the tool to carry on the family line. How King shameless." What he heard next made him heave a sigh of relief. "Junior sister. This jade archive is no ordinary item. I've heard that 3,000 years ago, there was a pill grandmaster in the cultivation world, right? This is the pill formula that countless generations of the pill grandmaster have painstakingly compiled." Lu Jingguang said. "Ah. Pill formula." Chu Ping'er stared at the jade archive in her hand and exclaimed, "Is this the pill grandmaster who used to be the #1 sect of the righteous path for countless years? Wasn't it said that they were destroyed by the combined forces of the devil path 3,000 years ago? How could something that belonged to them fall into your hands?" It was no wonder that Chu Ping'er was so shocked. Pill formulas were the most precious things in the cultivation world. A good pill formula was enough to set off a bloodbath in the cultivation world. Although absorbing the spiritual energy contained within spirit stones could increase one's cultivation, for those who had reached a certain level of cultivation, spirit stones weren't very useful. Things were different with a good pill formula. With a good pill formula, consuming one pill would be equivalent to a year of bitter cultivation, or even several years. For cultivators, advancing from one stage to another was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just like how Yu Qianqiu needed a foundation building pill to advance from the Qi training stage to the foundation building stage. Although foundation building pills were precious in the cultivation world, almost every sect had the pill formula to refine them. But what about pills that could allow one to advance from the core bearing stage to the nascent soul stage, and the tribulation stage? Although every sect had their own secret recipes and treasured them like treasures, the effects of consuming them depended on one's luck. It seemed that only a small portion of people were lucky. From this, it could be seen how precious a good pill formula was in the cultivation world. It was definitely not inferior to a good transcendent artifact. The Pill Grandmaster was one of the cultivation sects that excelled in this field. It was rumored that once their disciples reached a certain level of cultivation, they would have a 30% chance of breaking through after consuming the pill. Do not underestimate this 30%. If Kuang-tsung had 100 original infant stage cultivators, and 30% of them broke through to the tribulation stage, what would that mean? That would be an additional 30 tribulation stage cultivators. This kind of probability was something that none of the sects dared to think about. Chapter 39. Chu Ping'er's surprised expression made him very satisfied. Lu Jingguang said a little proudly, "My grandfather obtained it by chance when he annihilated a small devil sect some time ago. The different levels of pill formulas on it were enchanted with different levels of restriction. It's funny that the devil sect couldn't break the restriction, so they threw it aside for so many years. Hee hee. The first level of restriction has been broken by my grandfather. Some of the pill formulas inside are really extraordinary." Chu Ping'er frowned and said, "This is the spoils of war of the sect, and such an important treasure. It should belong to the sect. Why did the sect head give it to you?" When she asked this question, she actually suspected that the Lu grandfather and grandson wanted to keep this treasure for themselves. "Of course we have to hand it over. Who dares to keep this thing for themselves? Even if they keep it for themselves, who can rely on their own ability to gather all the medicinal ingredients on the pill formulas? But my grandfather said that whoever gives this thing to the sect will be given a great credit. My grandfather is already the sect head of Onkwangtsung, so... Lu Jingguang smiled meaningfully. Looking at Chu Ping, he said slowly, so my grandfather said that this thing should be given to the sect by me. Then the great credit will naturally fall on me. The purpose of coming out this time is to find a very good reason to hand this thing over to the sect. Otherwise, I won't even go out of the mountain gate of Onkwangtsung. Taking this thing out will only arouse suspicion. Chu Ping, was slightly shocked. First of all, the dignified sect head of Onkwangtsung would actually do such a thing. It was simply unbelievable. Second, he even told such a secret to her. Wasn't that forcing her to obey him? Yu Qianqiu, who was outside the door, pricked up his ears. Something that could make the Lu grandfather and grandson spend so much effort on it was definitely not an ordinary treasure. He didn't expect this secret to be accidentally heard by him. Yu Qianqiu didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he looked at the two ends of the corridor. Seeing that it was still quiet, he put his ear to it again. In fact, if it weren't for the inexplicable special effect of the golden bead, how could he eavesdrop on Lu Jingguang's conversation with his cultivation? He would have been discovered long ago. However, although this merit is great, I am not willing to enjoy it alone. As long as Junior Martial Sister agrees to be my Tao companion and cultivate together, I am willing to give you half of the merit. When I hand it over, I will report to the sect that this treasure was discovered by both of us together. What do you think, Junior Sister? Lu Jingguang threw out a condition that he thought was very attractive. Chu Ping'er was in a dilemma. Ever since she saw Yu Qianqiu downstairs, she had already given up on the idea of dual cultivation with Lu Jingguang. But now that Lu Jingguang had told her everything, she had no choice but to agree. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Junior Martial Sister. Can't I move you with my sincerity? Lu Jingguang saw that she was still hesitating. His tone was a little unhappy, and his words were already mixed with threats. Chu Ping'er naturally heard it. She bit her lips and said with a smile, Senior Martial Brother, such a great merit suddenly appeared and fell on me. My mind is a little confused. Can you let me have some peace and quiet? I will definitely give Senior Martial Brother an answer tomorrow. Okay. Then I won't disturb Junior Martial Sister's rest. Lu Jingguang stood up and replied readily. Chu Ping'er stood up and said, Senior Martial Brother, take care. Lu Jingguang nodded. His eyes swept over the latter's beautiful face and full chest, and then glanced at the gums in the room. In his mind, he could already imagine Junior Martial Sister moaning under him tomorrow. He didn't think that Junior Martial Sister could refuse the temptation he threw out. He walked out with a smile on his face. As soon as Lu Jingguang returned to his room and closed the door next to Chu Ping'er's quietly opened. Chu Ping'er sighed. Just as she was about to close the door, Yu Qianqiu stood in front of her with a smile. Chu Ping'er's eyes lit up. Before she could react, Yu Qianqiu had already squeezed in. In the process, he smelled a faint fragrance. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Based on his experience from his previous life, Chu Ping'er was still a virgin. Martial Uncle Yu. Chu Ping'er closed the door and locked it. She held back her surprise and greeted. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, no need to be so polite. We haven't seen each other for a long time. After saying that, he sat down. Ever since we parted ways at the Spirit Stone Mine in Onkwangtsung, it's been a year since I last saw you, Martial Uncle. Chu Ping'er said faintly and sat opposite him. We will naturally meet again if we are fated. Look, aren't we meeting each other now? Yu Qianqiu laughed heartily. I heard that Martial Uncle was killed by the Devil Dao in the Spirit Stone Mine. The whole of Onkwangtsung thought that you were really dead. I didn't expect to meet Martial Uncle here. That's right. Since Martial Uncle is fine, why didn't you return to Ongkwang-sung? Since Chu Pinger had doubts in her heart, she naturally had to ask. As she spoke, she got a clean cup, poured some tea, and placed it on the opposite side. Fortunately, I am lucky. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to see you again. Shaking his head and sighing, Yu Qiancho drank the tea in one gulp. He said, "Answer Ongkwang-sung." Humph. If I had really returned to Ongkwang-sung, I'm afraid that not even my bones could be found. Do you think the sect master and Wu Baoru would let me go? Rather than losing my life, I would rather live a carefree life as a loose cultivator. Chu Pinger thought that what he said was true. If she had stayed in Ongkwang-sung, she was afraid that she would not have had a good ending. After pouring another cup of tea for him, she slowly asked, "Martial Uncle, how have you been wandering outside for more than a year?" So, I can be considered to be doing okay. Chu Pinger looked at Yu Qiancho. She didn't quite believe it. In the cultivation world, if a loose cultivator didn't have a high cultivation and didn't have the protection of a sect, how many of them could have a good life? He was still the same. He would bear all the pain alone. She just didn't know when she would be able to see him again after this. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ask, "Martial Uncle, are you really not going to return to Ongkwang-sung?" "I'm not going back, Yu Qiancho suddenly asked, "You won't tell Ongkwang-sung that I'm still alive, will you?" Chu Pinger was stunned. She felt as if her heart had been pierced by a needle. She then bit her lips and said slowly after a long time, "Is Chu Pinger so untrustworthy in Martial Uncle's eyes?" Damn! This girl was stimulated. That's not right. Why does it feel a little weird? Could it be that this girl has fallen in love with me? Thinking of this, he felt that his judgment was not wrong. He was ecstatic and secretly had a plan. He didn't dare to say anything to stimulate Chu Pinger anymore. He quickly changed the topic and said, "Since I've left Ongkwang-sung, you don't need to call me Martial Uncle anymore. Call me by my name from now on. Let's be friends. By the way, can I call you Pinger from now on?" After that, he drank the tea in front of him. Pinger. What an intimate name. With this sentence, the hidden bitterness on Chu Pinger's face disappeared without a trace. She stared at Yu Qiancho affectionately with her eyes and nodded. Then, he stood up and filled the teapot with water. Yu Qiancho was now 100% sure that Chu Pinger was really interested in him. He raised his hand and touched his nose. A trace of a smile flashed across his face. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed the hand that was pouring the tea. He could clearly feel that the other party's hand was stiff, but she didn't pull it back. She still let him hold it. What was he trying to do? Chu Pinger's face was red. Her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. She didn't dare to look at him directly. Chapter 40. GGA. Her little hands were so soft and smooth. Yu Qiancho was very pleased with himself. He put down the teapot from her hands and said gently, "Pinger. Don't move. There's something in your hair. Let me help you remove it." As he spoke, he stood up and slowly pulled Chu Ping over. As Yu Qiancho's hand reached out to her hair, a strand of grass appeared in her hair as if by magic. Yu Qiancho gently plucked it and placed it in front of her eyes. He immediately let go of her hand. So there really was something in my hair. I thought. Chu Ping was secretly ashamed of herself for thinking in the wrong direction. Her face was so red that it couldn't get any redder. Who would have thought that Yu Qiancho would slightly bend down and put his mouth next to her ear and softly say, "Ping. Why is your body so fragrant?" Chu Ping-er's body trembled. Her delicate ear was disturbed by the hot breath coming from the man in front of her. She immediately felt unbearable. Especially when she smelled the man's body odor at such a close distance, her body felt a little weak. She wanted to step back, but her legs seemed to have no strength at all. She couldn't move at all. Her heart was beating so hard that even she could hear it. Ping-er. You smell so good. I want to hug you. Can I? Yu Qianqiu whispered softly in her ear. His lips were almost touching her bright red earlobe. Yu Qianqiu's words were like a devil's whisper. Chu Ping-er unexpectedly responded with an N. The first to strike has the upper hand. The last to strike will suffer. Little sister, big brother is coming. This thought flashed through Yu Qianqiu's mind. He was very proud of himself. The fairy sister that he had coveted for a long time was about to fall into his hands. This happiness came too suddenly and too unexpectedly. Even he didn't think it would happen. The hot breath from his mouth incessantly stimulated the other party's ears. His hands gently passed through the slender waist that was wrapped in silk and slowly hugged it. He slowly pulled it over and gradually hugged the curvy and fragrant body. When the two bodies were glued together, Chu Ping'er's eyes blurred as she let out a moan. How bouncy! Yu Qianqiu was stimulated. His mouth and hands started to get naughty. Chu Ping'er's body also twisted uneasily and hugged him. Feeling that Chu Ping'er was slowly responding, Yu Qianqiu also became aroused. He murmured, Ping'er, I want you. He didn't know how to control his hands anymore. Ah! Chu Ping'er couldn't help but cry out in pain. He immediately woke up and pushed Yu Qianqiu's chest with both hands. He panted and said, Qianqiu. We can't do this. We can't do this. No. I want you right now. Yu Qianqiu said and wanted to stick to her again. Chu Ping'er used all her strength to resist and almost begged, Qianqiu. I beg you, we really can't do it here. Senior Marshal brother Lu Jingguang also lives here. Hearing Lu Jingguang's name, Yu Qianqiu's head that was clouded by lust also woke up. Now was indeed not the time. Let's not talk about whether Chu Ping'er would agree or not. He had already made up his mind to steal Lu Jingguang's treasure. He couldn't delay this matter. Thinking of this, he could only let go of Chu Ping'er helplessly. Chu Ping'er gently leaned on Yu Qianqiu's body. Her face was still red, as if she was happy that Qianqiu could listen to her. She listened to his strong heartbeat and said slowly, Qianqiu, don't worry. Ping'er's body will only belong to you in this lifetime. Next time. Ping'er will definitely give it to you next time. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and responded helplessly. However, his hands were still taking advantage of her body. Not long after, Chu Ping'er let out a soft moan. She was a little aroused by his restless hands again. She quickly grabbed his hand and held it in her own. She snuggled in his arms and asked softly, Qianqiu. Do you think I'm a little frivolous for agreeing so quickly? No, I like it. After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he sat on the stool and pulled Chu Ping'er over to sit on his lap. Then do you like me? Chu Ping'er turned her head and looked at him. Silly. Needless to say, of course I do. Then when did you start to like me? Today. Chu Ping'er asked without blinking. No. Since the first day I came to this world, I like you. I often dream of you. Chu Ping'er clenched her fist and hit him. She said coquettishly, You're so annoying. I'm happy that you lied to me. I want to hear the truth. You really want to hear it? Yes. Yu Qianqiu saw that she didn't believe him even if he told the truth. He could only say half the truth, AI. Then I'll tell you the truth. Ever since I saw you naked in the forbidden pool of Ankwangsung, I started to like you. What? Chu Ping'er exclaimed. Her half-lying body suddenly sat up. She couldn't believe that Yu Qianqiu really saw her naked. Anger gradually appeared on her face. She was cheated. Her chest rose and fell violently due to her rapid breathing. I love you, Yu Qianqiu said softly. Whether it was the previous life or this life, these words were very lethal. Chu Ping'er immediately fell into his arms. He smiled and said, Ping'er, why are you so excited? I didn't mean to see it. I originally wanted to go to the stone cave in the forbidden area. Who knew that there would be a beautiful blue light sect female disciple who took off her clothes? AI. This must be heaven's will for us to be together. You're still talking. Chu Ping'er bashfully punched him again. He had seen all the parts of her body that he shouldn't have seen. He had touched all the parts that he shouldn't have touched. There was only one last step left. What else could she do now? This was fate. It's not like you'll lose a piece of meat just by looking. Yu Qianqiu laughed. Chu Ping'er immediately punched him 12 times. Yu Qianqiu laughed and grabbed her hand. He said, all right, Ping'er, don't mess around. I have something serious to ask you. Seeing that she finally became obedient, he asked again, Ping'er, why did you follow Lu Jingguang to the 100 Flowers Valley this time? Chu Ping'er pondered for a while and immediately told him everything that had happened, including the fact that Lu Jingguang had the prescription. Yu Qianqiu listened carefully. When he heard that Chu Ping'er clearly told him the content of the conversation between her and Lu Jingguang in the room, he compared it with what he had overheard outside. He found that there was nothing to hide. He immediately smiled with relief. Chapter 41. In fact, there were 2 reasons for his question just now. First, he wanted to know what Lu Jingguang's jade butterfly formula looked like, so that he could avoid making a mistake. Secondly, he wanted to know if Chu Ping'er truly loved him wholeheartedly. If there was anything that she was deliberately hiding, if she was hiding something, Chu Ping would never expect Yu Qianqiu to treat her wholeheartedly. He was afraid that she would be thrown onto the bed, stripped naked, and raped on the spot. After that, he would abandon her and kill her. Yu Qianqiu would never be reluctant to part with her. It was not wrong to say that he was ruthless. Although he usually laughed and laughed, deep down, he was still the boss of the underworld in his previous life. Think about it, how many people could become the boss of the underworld from nothing? How many of them were good people? Chu Ping'er leaned against Yu Qianqiu, lying docilely in his arms. She probably never thought that she had just escaped from the gates of hell. Yu Qianqiu's joking face showed a rare gentle expression. His fingers gently stroked Chu Ping'er's beautiful hair. Ping'er. Don't go back to Ankwangsung. Come with me. Now. Chu Ping paused and said, I also want to go with you, but how can I explain to my master? My master has always been very good to me. I'm afraid that he will be worried if I leave without a word. Your master is Lu Wanqian's disciple? I'm really worried about leaving you alone in Ankwangsung. Moreover, Lu Jingguang has ulterior motives towards you. Yu Qianqiu said worriedly. He. Chu Ping'er turned around and looked at him with a smile. What's wrong? Are you worried that I will be taken advantage of by Lu Jingguang? Yu Qianqiu said solemnly, I'm not worried, I'm very worried. Both the grandfather and grandson of the Lu family are nothing good, and Ankwangsung and that bunch of bullshit elders are all beasts in human clothing. I know that better than you do. You're just a little disciple of Ankwangsung, how could you possibly defeat them? Although his words were not very pleasant to hear, Chu Ping'er knew that he was really worried about her. After a sweet smile, she said to him solemnly, "Master has been very kind to me. I am an orphan. When I was very young, Master brought me up the mountain to cultivate. She has always treated me like her own daughter. Among all the female disciples, Master treats me the best. If I leave without saying anything, not only will Master worry, I will also feel very guilty." "Is your master a man or a woman?" Yu Qianqiu suddenly asked in an untimely manner. "Woman, why are you asking this?" Chu Ping'er asked curiously. "Oh. Then I'm relieved." Chu Ping'er was stunned for a moment, but she immediately reacted. She punched him again and said, "Why is your head filled with all these messed up things?" Yu Qianqiu laughed. In fact, he really wanted to say, "You're too pure." It was no wonder that he would have such a thought. In his previous life, he had been through a lot of dirty things. He had seen too many dark things. When he looked at things, it was inevitable that he would consider more negative things. He belonged to the kind of person who was more suspicious and didn't trust others easily. Sigh. "Looks like I can't persuade you." Yu Qianqiu sighed softly and suddenly hugged Chu Ping'er. "Ah! What are you doing?" Chu Ping'er cried out in surprise and joy. Yu Qianqiu smiled calmly and said, "Do you trust me?" Chu Ping'er was as happy as a cat in Yu Qianqiu's arms and nodded. Yu Qianqiu was moved. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead lightly. Then he said, "Ping'er, listen to me. Remember what I said. I agreed to let you go back to Ankwangsang. It's not that I don't want you to stay. I really want you to stay, but I don't want you to be in a difficult position. If I see you in a difficult position, I will feel even worse than you. Do you understand? After you go back to Ankwangsang, you must remember to protect yourself at all costs. As long as you still have me in your heart, treat it as protecting yourself for me. You must make yourself well. Ping'er. Remember, no matter what happens in the future, I will definitely find you. Even if I die, my soul will find you and let you know that I'm here. I don't want you to die." Chu Ping'er immediately covered his mouth and said with tears, "I want you to come back to me alive. I will definitely live well and wait for you to come back to me." Yu Qianqiu smiled gently and said, "As long as you can do it, I will definitely do it. No one can stop me." Ping'er. You have to remember, our separation today is for a better reunion in the future. Chu Ping'er nodded desperately with tears in her eyes. Seeing that she was crying, Yu Qianqiu wanted to ease the atmosphere. He put her down and said, "I have something to ask of you. Ping'er, will you agree?" Chu Ping'er said with tears in her eyes, "As long as I can do it, I will agree to anything." Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly, "This is something that you can do easily. I'm just afraid that you will not agree to it when the time comes. Do you not trust me that much?" Chu Ping'er was a little angry, but she suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu's face revealing a trace of a strange smile. She couldn't help being startled and said with slight apprehension, "Don't tell me you want me to do that thing with you again. I already said that it's not convenient for Lu Jingguang to live here." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He immediately understood what she was talking about. He secretly thought that this girl's awareness was too high. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Am I such a lowly person?" Chu Ping'er was so embarrassed that her face turned red. She stamped her feet and said, "If it's not that thing, then say it. I will agree to it, okay? This is what you said, you can't go back on your words." Yu Qianqiu put his mouth next to her ear and said softly, "My hand is a little itchy." As he said that, his hand had already slid down the smooth skin of a certain someone's collar. Chu Ping'er's body trembled, but she didn't resist. She only heard her muttering, "You still say that you're not a lowly person, but I've never seen someone more." Gradually, an uncontrollable moan came out of her mouth. Yu Qianzhou, who had succeeded in his plot, happily pulled out his hand and put it in front of his nose to smell it. He said, "It smells so good." Chu Ping'er was so embarrassed that she almost couldn't lift her face. "Wait for me, I will go out for a while and come back soon." Yu Qianzhou seemed to suddenly think of something. After saying that, he opened the door and went out, then closed the door. Chu Ping'er didn't know what he was going to do when he went out, so she hurriedly tidied up her collar that was loosened by that bad guy's hand. Yu Qianzhou came back very quickly. After he came in and closed the door, he took out a small exquisite bag and said with a smile, "I just bought it, it's for you." "Ah! It's a storage bag. What a beautiful storage bag, I have never used it before." Chu Ping'er, who received the gift, was very happy. After playing with it for a while, she suddenly frowned and said, "This thing is very expensive, it must be hard for you to be alone outside, why do you need to spend this money?" "Hee hee. As long as you like it, spending a little money is nothing. Your husband doesn't have anything else but money. In the storage bag, I have 100 high-grade spirit stones, 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. You can keep it on you, in case you need it when I am not here," Yu Qianzhou said with a smile. Chapter 42. The items in the storage pouch were just as Yu Qianzhou had said. Chu Ping'er, who had used her divine sense to check, was shocked. She asked doubtfully, "Where did you get so many spirit stones?" Yu Qianzhou smiled and didn't answer her directly. He just hugged her and said, "Take good care of yourself." Then he turned around and walked out. Chu Ping'er reluctantly shouted, "I'll wait for you." Yu Qianzhou didn't tell her that he was living next door. He didn't go back to his room either. He went straight to Guan Yu's room and pushed the door open. Guan Yu had returned and was fiddling with a lot of things on the table. When he saw Yu Qianzhou, he nodded with a smile. It was a good feeling to have money to spend. Why do you have a woman's fragrance?" Guan Yu's nose flared as he sniffed Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou was worried and impatiently asked, "How long will it take to get to Supporting Immortal Island from here?" "I want to go there as soon as possible." Guan Yu was startled and his expression sank. Yu Qianzhou would naturally use the Supporting Immortal token to go to Supporting Immortal Island. Once he used it, he would never have the chance to go back. However, his natal primordial spirit was in the hands of others. What could he do? He sighed and said, "There's a shop on Supporting Immortal Island in the 100 Flowers Valley. They use flying artifacts to transport things every day. If you show the Supporting Immortal token to the shopkeeper, they will naturally take you there." Yu Qianzhou pondered for a bit and had a plan. He patted Guan Yu's shoulder and sent him into his space without caring if he was happy or not. He also swept the things on the table into his space. Then, a long and thin pipe appeared in his hand. This was something he had bought outside. Today, when he was strolling in the market, a man suddenly pulled him to the side and asked if he wanted anything good. Yu Qianzhou asked him what it was, and the man pulled him to the side, took out the thing, and told him that it was called Fallen Immortal, and it was specially made to deal with cultivators. To put it bluntly, it was a sleeping gas specially made for cultivators. It was very effective against cultivators below the core formation stage. Yu Qianzhou was overjoyed. The two of them immediately ran into the wilderness and caught a few wild beasts to experiment. Sure enough, the effect was miraculous. Yu Qianzhou was so happy that he exclaimed that the man was a talent. In the end, he accidentally put the man into his own space. The two ends of the pipe had small holes sealed with wax, and there was a fuse halfway up the waist. Yu Qianqiu took out a flint and lit the fuse. The fuse dragged sparks as it drilled into the pipe. Then, the pipe made a light, pop sound and he felt a slight warmth in his hand. Yu Qianqiu nodded with satisfaction. He took it to the corridor and looked around to see that there was no one around. Then, he gently touched the door of Lu Xingguang's room and listened carefully to see if there was any movement inside. He unscrewed the wax seal on the two ends of the pipe and gently inserted one end into the crack of the door. He put the other end in his mouth and gently blew. Inside the room, Lu Xingguang was sitting cross-legged in meditation. With his cultivation, he had actually heard a little movement outside the door. He concentrated and didn't find anyone, so he didn't care. This was mainly because he was arrogant and had never suffered a loss in the cultivation world. Moreover, he had never heard of anyone from the righteous and devil Dao daring to cause trouble in the 100 Flowers Valley. A wisp of green smoke slowly floated out from the crack of the door and gradually filled the whole room. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Xingguang's nose slightly moved and he secretly wondered what was so fragrant. Then, he felt that the genuine qi in his body became heavy and slowed down. He frowned and opened his eyes to see the room filled with green smoke. Even though Lu Xingguang didn't have any experience, at this time, he also found that he had been tricked. He was shocked and just got up from the bed. He suddenly felt dizzy. He opened his mouth to shout, but before he could shout, his eyes suddenly went black and he fell to the ground with a bang. Yu Qianqiu had been guarding outside. He was not worried at all. Anyway, if he was discovered, he could hide in the golden bead. Hearing the sound of someone falling to the ground inside, he secretly said that he had succeeded. He put his palm on the door and exerted a little force. The bolt inside popped open. With his current level of cultivation, opening a door was a piece of cake. Moreover, in the cultivation world, this kind of door was just for show. Even if the door was bolted like this, it wouldn't be able to stop anyone. Only the sound of the bolt opening could alert the person inside. However, the person inside had already fainted. Pushing the door open, Yu Qianqiu quickly went inside. When he saw Lu Xingguang lying on the ground, he closed the door again. He walked straight over and without saying a word, lifted his leg and kicked the person lying on the ground. Feeling his unvented fire, he kicked a few more times, cursing as he kicked, "How dare you flirt with my girl? You're courting death." After feeling a little better, he took off the storage pouch on Lu Xingguang's waist and opened it. He released his divine sense to investigate. Sure enough, he found a jade archive that was exactly the same as the one Chu Ping had described. When he used his divine sense to investigate the jade archive, he found that the layers of restrictions inside were completely undetectable. Only the first layer was unlocked. He reckoned that it was the layer that Lu Chongqing had unlocked. There was a whole bunch of strange medicinal names. Yu Qianqiu had never heard of any of them before. He couldn't tell whether the jade archive was real or fake. After storing the storage pouch into his dimensional space, he immediately searched around the room. He didn't even let go of the bedding on the bed. After confirming that there was nothing else hidden, he stripped off Lu Xingguang's clothes and carefully examined them piece by piece. However, he didn't find anything. This guy has soft skin and tender flesh. No wonder he dared to seduce my girl, Yu Qianqiu muttered as he looked at the naked Lu Xingguang on the ground. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of bringing trouble to Chu Ping, he would have killed Lu Xingguang right there and then. However, he was unwilling to do so. His gaze fell on Lu Xingguang's genitals. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and sneered. He glanced at the sword hanging by the bed and walked over to pull it out. He circled around the naked man on the ground and swung the sword in his hand at the genitals of Lu Xingguang's thighs. Blood splattered everywhere. Ping, I really don't trust this kind of person. I had no choice but to castrate him, Yu Qianqiu sighed. When he mentioned Chu Ping, his brows furrowed again. Lu Jingguang had only told Chu Ping, about the pill formula. Now that it had been stolen and he had been castrated, the first person the Lu family's grandfather and grandson would suspect would be Chu Ping, This wouldn't do. Looking at Lu Jingguang's lower body bleeding all over the ground, Yu Qianqiu's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. He smiled lightly and took a brush from the brush rack on the side. He dipped it in the blood on the ground and scribbled a few lines of words on the wall. Lu Chongqing, I will take revenge for the extermination of my family in the future. I met your grandson by chance, so I will collect some interest first. After doing this, Yu Qianqiu walked out unhurriedly and closed the door. When he passed by Chu Ping's room, he resisted the urge to go in again. He walked out of the 100 Flowers house and went straight to the shops around the square. He had seen the shops of Fuxian Island when he was strolling around during the day, so he naturally had to go there now. When he walked into the market, he thought about how he didn't know when he would be able to come back again, so he looked at the items on the stalls as he walked. As long as he found something useful, he directly bought it and threw it into his storage bag. He didn't even care about the price. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.